Hello, everyone. We'd like to get our meeting underway. It's great to have such a large crowd this evening. I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Erin Morris. I'm Vacaville's Community Development Director, and I'm going to be leading this city-sponsored community meeting this evening for the Menard Energy Battery Storage proposal. Does anyone require Spanish translation? Spanish translation? I'm seeing, if you do, we have it here. But we'll move on. Before I talk about the purpose of the meeting and go just do a brief agenda overview, I'd like to acknowledge that we have some elected and appointed officials here and some representatives. Councilmember Roy Stockton is here. Planning Commission Chair Brandon Klein is here. Planning Commissioner Amanda Rudin is here. And we also have Kim Fu from Congressman Michael Thompson's office. For the Vacaville elected councilmen and planning commissioners, they're here to listen. They won't be commenting on the project because if it becomes a real project and moves forward, they're going to want to be able to participate in the formal decision making. But I want you all to know they're here and they're here to listen to you and take part in that way. We also have staff from our city manager's office, community development department, economic development department, fire, and others also here to support the success of this evening's meeting. So now, I will need this clicker because I don't have the magic to just wave my hand and make the slides move. So that was the welcome and introductions part. My presentation is going to talk a little bit about the site history, what the council's actions have been to date, and I'm going to talk about the development review process. That should take about 10 to 15 minutes. The applicant has a 25-minute presentation that will follow, and if everything goes well, by 7, we'll be asking for your questions and comments. The whole point of tonight is that from the city's perspective, we want you to be informed about where this proposal is at and what is happening and what might happen, and we want you to have a chance to hear from the applicant. But city staff and the applicant team are really wanting to hear from you, so we're going to work toward getting to that part of the agenda as quickly as possible. So briefly, the history of the site that the battery storage proposal is being considered for. This is the Gibson Canyon Creek wastewater treatment plant site that was built in 1950, 1960. And it basically consisted of unlined, open wastewater treatment ponds. This site was identified as contaminated, the groundwater was contaminated, and cleanup began in 2005. And the city, as part of getting Mariani off the site, has an agreement that when and if the property sells, we will be splitting the proceeds with Mariani Packing Company. The plant was actually authorized for closure in 2009. It's been under a state oversight since then as the cleanup is continuing. And in 2020, the city council declared the property surplus. It's city owned, so the city has full control over the property. By declaring it surplus, the city of Vacaville has determined that we don't need it for a public use, and that's part of the background that leads us here this evening. So this is just a quick site map. The applicant has more exhibits like this that they'll go into, but the red polygon shows where the site is located, and in particular shows its proximity to the Vaca-Dixon substation, and also, of course, to rural residences on multiple sides, and of course, the North Village development to the west. And this is an aerial view taken with a drone, and this is looking from Leisure Town Road toward the Vaca-Dixon substation as well as 80. And you can really see the site has very minimal improvements. The roads are kind of paved, and it's pretty much open land with one very small structure toward the back of the site. And again, the applicant is going to show you more on-site imagery in a moment. So the background on this one and kind of how we got here today, back in 2020, it was the first time the city of Vacaville received interest from a battery company in doing battery storage on this property. And at that time, the city council said, no, we're not interested in this, go look at other sites. So over the last couple years, this battery company has been looking at other sites. They came back to council in 23 and requested an exclusive negotiating agreement to allow them to really dig into this site and to see if this site would work for their purposes. This is where I feel like it's very important to say that there is an agreement between the city and the battery company, and it is not requiring the city to approve a battery storage proposal. It doesn't require the city to sell the property. It sets forth basically a year when the city is in exclusive negotiations with the company, but again, it does not approve the project. That's a whole separate process that I will get into in just a moment. So the ENRA, as I said, is a 12-month exclusive negotiating period. The agreement has the potential for 2 extensions at the end of the year. I just went over the part that the city is not obligated to approve this or to sell the land. We just can't talk to other people about their interest in buying this land for the year of the agreement. And so during this negotiating period, which began in January of this year, the applicant is required to look at the site, evaluate the land conditions, work with the city to figure out what the permit process would be, do their feasibility studies, other due diligence, and ultimately conduct significant public outreach. And tonight is our first public outreach, and it's really exciting to see so many people here. It actually really is. We mailed out 1,700 notices, and again, this is probably one of the best turnouts the city's had for a meeting lately, underscoring that this is obviously important to all of you, as it is to us. So back in earlier this year, Menard submitted what's called a preliminary review application with my department, Community Development. And this is where they put forth their first concept for a battery storage facility and outdoor sport field. And so staff from the city, which consists of fire staff, engineers, public works, planners, we did a very thorough review of the proposal. And in April, we provided detailed written feedback. And frankly, we identified a ton of questions about safety, logistics, how this would work, why this, why here, what kind of batteries. So a lot of the questions we've heard from the public as this project has kind of gotten out there are the same questions that city staff have that are in that letter from April. Since then, we've met with Menard a couple times to talk about some of the questions we have, and we're still in that process of getting more information. The city has not received a formal development application yet, so these are all concepts at this point. There's nothing formally in the process of being considered. And then this meeting is because we thought it was really important to get out to the community before any formal applications are filed so that staff and the applicant have all of the concerns and questions aired, and so we can then be thoughtful about that. So if this project becomes a real project, and if Menard decides to pursue this, they would be filing multiple applications with the planning department or the community development department planning division. This project, based on staff's initial assessment, would require a general plan amendment, a zoning code text amendment, a development agreement, conditional use permit, design review, environmental review, likely an environmental impact report, as well as airport land use commission review. These slides are all going to be on our website, by the way. If you're taking notes, I just want you to know it'll all be there. It's already there right now, in case you want to refer to them later. So if a formal application is filed after this evening's community meeting, if you're on the email list, you received a mailed notice, or you sign up for our email list, you would receive a notice of application and an invitation to another community meeting as soon as the application comes on file, probably within a few weeks. We'll get that going. We will hold another community meeting to say this is actually what's formally proposed and to get further feedback. The council would have to initiate the general plan amendment and zoning. Doing that doesn't mean they'd be approving it. They would just be saying we want to consider this. So that's a council action that would have to occur. After that, there'd probably be another community meeting. There'd be the Airport Land Use Commission review, a formal Planning Commission public hearing, and culminating in a final decision by council. I'm sharing all this because I just want you to know there's a heck of a lot of process in taking a battery storage facility from concept to decision, and that's all hasn't happened yet, and it's not in motion yet. So I think I stay within the time limit I set for myself. I'm going to ask the applicant to do their presentation. I appreciate you all holding questions and comments because it'll allow us to get to the public comment period that much faster. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to the applicant, and so they can introduce their team and take it from here.
I've got my TED Talks microphone on here. So I can walk over there. My name is, oh, there you go. So my name is Rob Howe. I'm the project director for the Menard Battery Project. I joined the company that's doing this back in May. My background is a mechanical engineer with 35, 40 years of construction experience. I basically built power plants all my life. done a little bit of development, but mostly it's just building power plants. As such, I'm really keenly interested in safety. That's been my, I've had projects that have had safety incidents, and every time it happens, it's devastating. And so safety is my #1 concern. I joined this company partially because the company has a history and a background of safe installations. I'm really proud of the fact that our company worldwide, the installations that we've had no safety incidents. So really, really proud of that. My boss here, Sumit.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Try this.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, you're there.
All right, first thing first, thank you everyone for showing up for this meeting. We are really encouraged with the participation this community is showing towards this project. Really, this is exactly what we want, an engagement with the community. Hear your voices, hear all the good things, the not so good things, and we are over here to basically implement the feedback that we get. As Rob Howe pointed out, for us, safety is very important. That's one commitment you'll get personally from me and also from our entire team to do the right things over here. So having said that, a little bit about myself. 27 years, all of which has been in the power generation industry. I've built projects, I have developed projects. I've done that in Asia, Europe, and US, and very excited to be part of this project over here. So I hope we can work together to make this happen.
So, thanks, Sumit. Sumit Bidani.
Sorry, Sumit Bidani, I should have introduced, my apologies.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. So my presentation is going to go over what is BESS, or Battery Energy Storage System. What are the benefits to Vacaville? Why did we pick this location? And finally, I want to talk about the safe design that we've implemented here. And then obviously we're going to go into the Q&A period. So let's go ahead and get started here. So first of all, there's been not much information from us, the applicant, and I'm sorry for that, but we're here, previously, in the absence of that information, there's been a lot of conceptions, ideas, information that's gotten out there about what the project might look like. And we're here tonight to talk about what the project will look like. So what is BESS? So with California's commitment to renewables, energy storage is an absolute requirement for times when the sun's not shining, the wind's not blowing. I've been involved in energy storage for over 12 years. So battery energy storage systems are very common and getting more and more common. Wide-scale deployment worldwide. In the US alone, there's over 22,000 megawatts in over 500 projects. 22,000 megawatts is about 1/3 the size of the California grid. So it's pretty big. These projects, especially the newer ones, are safe. So on the left, you see the legacy project design, which is in a warehouse. The modern day projects have gone away from warehouse and are in batteries housed inside of small containers. Closer up, it looks like this. There's no opportunity for people to be in the same airspace as the batteries. So their outdoor facilities basically look like containers. In fact, this is what an individual container looks like. And to give you a concept of how much power that is, it's the equivalent of three Teslas, 3 Model S, Teslas. So that's how much power you have in one of those containers. Oops, I'm pointing lights. So now let's get to the benefits to Vacaville. So first of all, energy reliability. So it's going to be a 4-hour storage at full output, would be a 4-hour storage. And because it's co-located with the Vacadixon substation, it provides increased reliability. What do I mean by that? If there's a brownout or blackout, like with a water facility, water's going to flow to the nearest area that's available. Similarly here, if you have a battery storage, it's going to flow first to the nearest area, which is the area around the Vaca-Dixon substation, i.e. Vacaville. So this will help avoid brownouts and blackouts. Second thing is grid resilience. Grid resilience is more of a matter of the quality of the power that you're providing. So if you've ever been to a third world country, or unfortunately even some places in the US, when you see lights go dim, that's a voltage fluctuation. That's where voltage dims. If you've been to places where the frequency changes, we're supposed to have 60 hertz frequency here. If it changes, that's a frequency problem. There are industries that are really sensitive to that, basically healthcare, so hospitals can't tolerate that. And some of these biotech facilities that are interested in moving to the Vacaville area, they need that quality of power. With this, you're increasing the opportunities for long-term growth, investment, and jobs. So secondly, we're exploring the possibility of what we call a microgrid with the City of Vacaville, which, similar to SMUD, or the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, it would be Vacaville-owned power lines, and we would be providing power directly to them. Again, we're in discussions. There's some interest there from both the City of Vacaville and ourselves. So obviously another benefit would be jobs. During the construction phase, we anticipate about 140 jobs. We already have an agreement with the Carpenters Union to engage them in a project labor agreement. So that commitment's already been made. These will be union jobs. There will also, after the construction period, be a few long-term jobs. These would be more technicians that are there pretty much every day, maintaining the individual battery containers. Tax revenue. So over the anticipated life cycle of this part of the project is about 20 years. So over that period, it'd be $30 million worth of tax revenues to the City of Vacaville. Obviously more than that, but only $30 million goes to Vacaville. Not something we can do anything about. So the other thing is community benefit. So this is a normal part of any development project that's out there, any developer. There's going to be a community benefits package. Initially, there was an idea to put a rec center near the project. Ultimately, I mean, whether it's that or somewhere else or something else, it's up to the community. You all are the ones that need to decide. It's going to be used at the discretion of the Vacaville community. So to sum up this portion of it, about $650 million in investment to improve grid reliability, grid resilience. We're focused on facilitating the transition to clean energy. This project, we're in active discussions with utilities. The utilities are the ones that we sell the power to effectively. And we've been shortlisted for a long-term energy supply with more than one utility. And the project could be operational as early as mid-2026. So why this location? Well, battery projects serve best if they're close to where the load is, meaning if you're close to where the substation is. Now, some substations are in residential areas. Some substations are in business areas, co-located. And there are best projects that are located right with those substations. This one is co-located with the Vaca-Dixon substation, as close as we could possibly get to it. So, secondly, as was indicated earlier, it's surplus land, from a decommissioned water treatment facility. We call it a brownfield project. It's not really, the land doesn't have a whole lot of other use, frankly. Another reason why we chose this location, California defines a remote location for battery energy storage. I mean, the codes define it as a remote location if it's more than 100 feet away from where people can be. So the project boundary is more than 400 feet from the nearest place where people can be, which is residences on Mills Lane. It's actually more than 600 feet from any of the battery containers. And I think like 1,100 feet from North Village. So the other thing is this location is already kind of reserved. There won't be any more developments anywhere closer because of Vacadixon on the east. The power lines to the south and north, these are 230 kilovolt power lines, and their rights of way indicate that you can't build any closer than that. Directly to the west is a mitigation land, so that it'll never be used for any other development. So, if you look closely at the area where the batteries are, you can kind of see a shadow around it. That's because, as was indicated, it was a pond, basically, for the water treatment facility. So it's a basin with berms around it. And the altitude difference between the bottom of the basin and the top of the berm is about 8 to 12 feet. It kind of varies. But there's a road along the berm, and it looks down into this basin. So the batteries, as I showed earlier, I showed you a single unit. It's about 6 feet wide. It depends on the manufacturer, but it can be about 6 feet wide, 8 feet long, about 8 to 10 feet tall. So it's basically going to be hidden. So if you look at, here's an artist's rendition from Leisuretowne Road, you really don't see anything. Similarly, from Mills Lane, you don't really see anything. You can sort of see the fence that'll be along the top of the berm. So that's it for why this location. Now I want to get into our safe design. And this is probably the most important. Again, I just want to stress that for me, having been in the construction field for all of my working life, I'm very interested in safe. That's my number one concern. But basically, as we go through the design, you'll see that it's safe, it's quiet, there aren't any smells, there aren't any visual impacts. And then I do want to get into, well, what if? What if you have an issue? What happens? So, firstly, there's a matter of code. In the past, we had a lot of different types of designs, and I'm sure many of you have looked and seen some of the incidents that have happened with some of the other facilities. A lot of those are old designs, built in warehouses, using different chemistries, a lot of different things, packing a lot of batteries in one area. So, as a result of some of those incidences, both the industry and the code people have basically improved the codes, made it more onerous, more difficult, but more safe. There are two codes covering best installations in the U.S., IFC, or International Fire Code, and then the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. California has adopted the IFC. Other states have adopted NFPA. However, Vacaville has basically told us, the Vacaville City Fire Department has basically told us, you're going to do the hardest of both. And we welcome that. We want to do the most stringent or strict code compliances that we can. Now, so what makes batteries more safe now than they were before? Well, in the past, there was no battery management system. It's the intelligent design, or an AI, it's not really an AI, but intelligent design, which stops fires before they happen. How does it do that? Well, every metal container that you saw has a suite of sensors that report to a battery management system that's in that unit, and that reports to a larger energy management system for the site. But it's a suite of sensors that identify voltage fluctuations, heat, any gases, any smoke, and certainly any fire. And if any of those happens, mainly if you have voltage fluctuations or any sense of heat or gases emanating, then that container is isolated immediately. If for whatever reason it goes beyond that and gets into serious off-gassing or even a fire potentially, the battery management system will isolate the entire site. Basically, no charging, no discharging, it completely stops it. But the main thing is it's designed to stop it before any fire event happens. Independently, this is more what the fire folks are interested in, has an independent and redundant fire alarm reporting system. So over there you see a pull station. In that corner over there, that's a fire pull station. Well, somewhere in this building, and it's probably near in the lobby maybe, is a fire control panel that identifies all the pull stations and all the doors that only open if you open them, they alarm, all the different fire-related stuff. We'll have that too at our facility, and it's powered separately, it communicates separately, so it's a completely separate and redundant system, and it reports directly to, well, it reports to the fire department. Now, the facility is designed to have no operating personnel. There will be, we do anticipate staff during the day doing maintenance, but there won't be any operational personnel there. So we're monitoring it remotely, just like a control center in a power plant. It's a remote operations. Ours is also remote, 24/7, 365. So if there's an issue, our BMS, or battery management system, will let us know. Independently, the fire alarm system will let the fire department know. So we haven't done it yet, but as we proceed, we will be establishing with the fire department an emergency fire or emergency response plan. So in the unlikely event of an incident, it's intended that no one enter the facility. That's the main thing. The fire department will confirm with us that no one's there, that the site is already evacuated and no one's there, and then they can just, establish a perimeter around the site to make sure that no one enters. Our current design does not require the use of water in the event of a fire. In fact, water can be counterproductive. If one battery or one container catches fire, the metal box it's housed in is designed to prevent the spread of fire to anywhere else and then expected to burn out, so that without any need for water. So it poses no danger to human life, and there's no opportunity for soil contamination. So again, what happens if? And so this slide is important. I know the community's concerned about what happens if there is a fire, if there's off-gassing. Is that toxic? Are there going to be any issues with people's health? And so we contacted, we were concerned with the same thing, but we contacted this company called Fire and Risk Alliance. They, each type of battery has to be tested. There's a underwriter's laboratory test. It's called the UL 9540A test. And what they do is they take these units, they'll basically take several of the boxes, they'll take one in the middle and light it on fire on purpose. They'll heat it up until it basically self-propagates and starts burning. First off-gassing and then burning. And then they take measurements. First of all, they're trying to make sure, to pass the test, you need to make sure that that fire doesn't propagate to any of the adjacent containers. So that's one good thing. You'll know that if there's a fire in one, it won't propagate to any of the others. But one of the things that that is done, one thing that's tested for is what are the gases that are there? What gases if it's off-gassing, and what gases if it actually catches fire? How far will those gases travel? How quickly will they disperse? And finally, I'm going to give it a little bit of comparison to a house fire, but the three main gases that come out when it's off-gassing, this is not when it's actually caught fire, but when the batteries they may start heating up. I mentioned earlier that if there's a voltage fluctuation or it senses heat. So if that happens, if it starts heating up, it can produce gases. And the gases include things like carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen. Carbon monoxide is the most concerning of those three. And when they did the test, basically it extended no further than 3 feet from the container which it came from. CO2 was 5 feet, and then hydrogen was more like 15 feet. In the event of a fire, those gases were sensed no further away than 45 feet from the container. Now our setback is like 90 feet between any battery and the project boundary. So this example that I gave you is actually what they call the hypothetical worst case example, which is very little wind. Now you think that sounds counterproductive, very little wind? Aren't I worried about when it's windy? Well, if it's windy, those gases disperse even quicker. They did tests at 1.3 meters per second, which is about 3 miles an hour, at about 8 miles an hour, and then 16 and 25 miles an hour. And the dispersion rate is much higher the higher the wind is. So basically, from within, if a single unit goes off and happens to catch fire, if you're further away than 45 feet, there's no detectable gases, basically. Another thing is quiet. BESS actually is quiet by nature. There's two moving parts in the two types of moving parts. Each battery container has an air conditioner. And these are small air conditioners. They're only supposed to air condition space, 6 by 8 by 10. And then the fans on the transformers are also noisy, can be noisy. But given that it's in a basin with a berm around it, you're not going to hear anything either at the project boundary or certainly not where people live. Additionally, we've got code. There are sound codes that we have to build to. So if near field, far field sound requirements. So we will be adhering to those too. Then I want to talk a little bit about what kind of batteries are we going to use. Well, we are kind of technology agnostic. We'll build anything that makes sense. But I first want to talk about not all lithium batteries are the same. There's been a change in chemistry. Again, one of the issues when batteries were built in these warehouses, there was a different chemistry. Today, we're using something called lithium iron phosphate, which is inherently safe, and it is the modern BESS industry standard. LFP, or lithium iron phosphate, less volatile, less energetic, and it's widely accepted by both the finance and insurance industries. So they do make these factors make the LFP as a preferred choice for lithium-ion batteries. Previous incidents that have happened, both with cars, EV cars, and some BESS installations, are with NMC, which is nickel, magnesium, cobalt, or NCA, which is nickel, cobalt, aluminum. Now, we have started looking at we've been looking at iron flow batteries. We're in discussions with the supplier to see if this technology is viable. We're very well aware of the facility that's proposed and being built in part at SMUD, at the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. And we're in discussions with the supplier there to see if it's an option here. As for other technologies, sodium salt, vanadium flow, and then there's solid-state batteries, which these are more sort of laboratory scale or sort of in the kilowatt range of field testing. So new that we don't really know about the risks, and frankly, we don't know about the risks about iron flow yet because it hasn't been widely used yet. So, see, these other technologies you really can't get financed or insured for large projects. So now, based on current discussions, I know there's been a lot of talk about what size this project is going to be. Right now, we're in discussions with the utilities, and we anticipate the project will be sized at 300 to 400 megawatts of installed capacity. We can only build what we can sell. So the project this size will take about 8 to 12 months to build, possibly a touch longer. And then during the operational period, there will be 2 to 4 full-time equivalents. I know, like it was said, that every battery needs maintenance every 4 to 6 months, but there's a lot of batteries there. So it'll take 2 to 4 full-time equivalent technicians, pretty much operating 40 hours a week, to make sure that we can maintain. So pretty much during the week, we anticipate somebody will be there operating or maintaining the batteries. And then finally, the project's expected to have a 20-year useful life, after which it'll be decommissioned. The land will be returned to its original state if there's no further use for it. And then the batteries are subject to a recycling program. And that's, I know people have been concerned about batteries not being recycled. I've been contacted personally by people saying, "Are you doing a battery project? Can we enter into an agreement that when these things, are done, you can recycle them with us and we'll pay you X?" So they do make money off of recycling the lithium-ion batteries. And that's pretty much it. So I guess we're ready for questions and answers.
Thank you, Rob. I'm going to first introduce the city team and then talk about how we're going to make sure everybody that wants to speak has a chance to do so. It's a large crowd. I did want to acknowledge Planning Manager Payman Bavand. He leads our planning team, so if this becomes a real application, he and his team would be taking the lead on the public outreach, the processing, and all the public hearings, etc. To Payman's right is Chief Chris Concepcion. He's our fire chief, here to listen this evening and also answer tough questions if we have tough questions for him. And then to his right is Chief, I'm going to upgrade your title, Jill, Fire Marshal Jill Childers. Jill is actually one of our partners in the development review process and help provide initial comments on this project. So I brought these folks here to help try to answer questions. The way this is going to work is this is not like a planning commission or council meeting where we're going to start a timer and you're going to talk for 3 minutes and I'm going to tell you your time is up. What would be more effective so everyone can be heard this evening is, and I will call people out in groups of 5 to speak, really to articulate the essence of your concern. If you're concerned about safety or fire, say that. Get right to that. And then if you have questions, if it's something that's like factually known and we can answer the question, we'll do it right here. If we have a question that we can't answer, this meeting is being recorded, we'll be taking notes, and the city is working on publishing a frequently asked questions section on our website. A lot of you did send in questions ahead of this meeting through our website. You can keep doing that. That's part of why some of the things in the presentations, we were trying to touch on things that we know people have been asking us about. And I guess we're going to kind of go from here. We have 3 roaming mics. And so I'm going to ask we'll start on this side of the room. Anybody here want to lead us off with your questions or your comments on the project? Just put your hand up and I'm going to count you out here. Thank you. Test. Oh, there we go. So I've got you, sir. And then who else wants to speak? Okay, I'm going to go here. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the back, and then we'll go again and we'll go to the next group. So, sir, where's my first?
Yes, I have a couple questions for the construction of this. How are the batteries going to be charged?
That. Oh, there we go. I'm hearing me. So the batteries are connected to Vaca-Dixon substation through a 500 kilovolt line. It'll be an underground line between us and the Vaca-Dixon substation. Obviously, we're charging when the wind's blowing and the sun's shining, and we're discharging when it's not.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, now Vaca-Dixon's a transmission substation, and City of Vacaville is a distribution system, which is out substations on Depot. So how does that benefit the City of Vacaville? Except keep the transmission going.
So yes, we are tying into a transmission we're tying into transmission voltage at 500 kV, and obviously that has to feed down to the distribution voltage, which is, what, 55 kV around here? I'm not sure.
21.
Huh?
21 or 12.
Okay. So, good. Well, I mean, it's from, but all that power comes from Vaca-Dixon substation. So it has to, it goes through the normal Vaca-Dixon substation from transmission, step down to whatever the distribution voltage is.
So is Cal OSHA going to be involved in it?
Well, yeah, while we're building, of course.
No, the Cal.
CAISO?
Yeah, yeah.
Cal ISO, they are the independent system operator
Yeah.
for this part of the world. I anticipate they will be.
Okay.
Go to the next one, but I'll come back.
Yeah, thank you.
Who is my number 2 hand? I'll go here. Test. There we go. Okay.
One thing I've loved about Vacaville and living here for 30 years is how quiet it is. In the Browns Valley neighborhood at night, we sleep with our windows open all year round. Someone closes a car door, I'm like, who, what was that? Because it's so quiet. I have a feeling that this sound is going to travel. That's one of my big concerns. And the other thing I have, that was my statement, and the other thing is, how can you possibly put this facility in so near Kaiser Hospital? That shocks me. That's like a mile, not even maybe.
I'm going to take those both as statements because I don't want to have too much back and forth. We want to hear from everybody. I do want to say if this moves forward as part of the city's environmental review process, we will absolutely require noise studies. But we're going to move on because I want to get everyone's comments and questions out. So you were at technically number 2, and now you can be
Noise in hospital.
I guess I'll try to be fast. Hi, good evening. I have a few questions. The first is, you had said that there were 0 incidents with this company. How long has this company been in existence, and how many projects are we talking about when you say 0?
So the company is an international company. We're doing business in as far as away as Australia, Asia Pacific, Europe, and in the US. So the company has been in existence for a number of years. In terms of the total number of projects with a global footprint,
When we say do you have 5 years, 10 years?
I would say between the parents, well, there are 2 parents to this company. One of them has been in business for, I would say, many, many, many decades. Sorry.
Okay. And then how many projects?
So globally, we are implementing, we've got about 12 gigawatts, 12,000 megawatts of projects which are under development, and a number of those projects are in active construction. Now, as you would recognize that the energy storage concept that has evolved, it has evolved with technology. Energy storage in the crudest form used to be flywheels. From that, it moved to pumped hydro. And now we have moved, the industry has moved to what is called as battery storage, purely driven by the needs of the grid and the fast response. So if the question really is that how many of these, I mean, yes, we mentioned about 500 of these facilities are operational in the US, but for us, we don't have an operational facility in the US at this point. But that really does not reflect, the point I'd like to make is, as far as the technology is concerned, the technology itself is safe, reliable, and it's not up to me to basically build my own equipment. The equipment really comes from large proven technology providers.
As a follow-up to this meeting, the city will be putting together answers to questions, and also on behalf of the applicant, they have their own website with their own answers. We're not going to be able to answer every question, but I hear your question. It's specific. We will get you a specific answer. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask or say?
Just so you know, they said it's about 1,100 feet from the community, which is about a fifth of a mile. It's 5,280 feet in a mile. How many containers are you for the site?
Yeah, so if it's, let's say it's a 400 megawatts, it's 300 to 400 megawatts. If it's 400 megawatts, each of those containers is 750 kilowatts. So you divide 400 by 0.75, you end up with 533 and a third.
All right.
So.
Sorry, I missed those numbers. I would have done the math myself. let's see, and then there were some, I had a statement that there was a lot of vague statements exploring the possibility of microgrids. So possibilities are not things that were necessarily going to come to fruition. Community benefits was unclear and vague, so we don't really know what we're getting with that. Construction period is about 3 years, so that's about 3 years of union jobs, and we're not guaranteed anything longer than that at this point, except for 3 to 4 people. Things were expected to burn out. So again, vague things I wanted to point out. And then also, there are some studies that I can provide the link if necessary, but gases, in addition to carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen, it's also hydrogen cyanide, hydrogen bromide, hydrogen fluoride that I believe are normally released with these ions, unless there's something different with yours.
So the answer to the last one is that's factually inaccurate. And this is not me saying it, this is UL Labs saying it based on their tests. So that information is available publicly to everyone.
So with your specific batteries?
Highly encouraged to look at that because this is factually incorrect.
Okay, yes, if we could clarify that.
And then going back to some of the previous comments, I apologize, I probably didn't remember all of those. I am not sure whether we were vague in terms of our commitment to the community benefit package. That is a commitment from us. I heard another.
I have my last thing. My last comment was my concern about the property values, if this is going to be considered a hazard zone. We already have trouble getting fire insurance for our homes, so are we going to even be able to get it? Are our premiums going to go up? What's going to happen to our property taxes? And then if it is considered a hazard zone, are we going to be able to sell our houses to other people? And that's only half my notes, but I'll stop.
I want to thank you. I think if we have applause, we're not going to be able to hear from everyone this evening, but if you want to do jazz hands or something to show support, that's a quiet way of showing support. I'm going to ask the applicant team to not respond to every public comment. I want you all to be able to say what's on your mind and get it out there. I do want to kind of do the dance of trying to get answers when we can get them, but we're not going to debate some of these things because we will not get through hearing from everyone. And you made great points, and you're all making great points, and I want to keep moving through the folks that are in our first round and then keep moving. We are recording this meeting. We will be publishing answers to questions this month on the city's website, which you can access through the QR code. We are going to get a lot of answers this evening, but not every single thing will be answered. But again, the city's commitment is any questions that come up this evening, we will be providing responses on our website based on the best information that we have. So I want to go on to Dave here.
Thank you. I just had a couple of quick questions, and the first one is, you had mentioned in 2020 you had approached the city about a site for battery storage, and the city said they weren't interested. You went around, you looked at other sites. 3 years later, you came back to Vacaville. Could you explain to us the reasons that other public entities and locations that you spoke to did not want to have Menard?
Do you want to address it?
Historically, I think I can say historically there have been other locations that have been explored, but that's, let's say, history. What is more important is why this location. One of the elements.
Well, I'm sorry, but I do believe that is important. Why other locales turned you down? I believe that's an issue and should be explored or at least explained. And I'm not accusing anything. I don't know, but the fact is, it was 3 years later you come back to Vacaville for another bite of the apple after exploring other sites.
So let me try to explain that. Yes, there was an alternate site that was looked into, but that site involved more than 6 miles of a Gentile line coming into the Vaca-Dixon substation, and routing a Gentile line this long does involve a lot of complexities running through various properties. So that by no means is an easy task. That's one. Second is, the current site that has been proposed, as we have seen, is a previously shut down wastewater treatment facility. We believe this offers a great opportunity to put a land to use, which otherwise doesn't have a reasonable use. Third is its proximity to the Vaca-Dixon substation itself. Fourth, we believe this property does offer, from a safety perspective, a lot of benefits, which will lead to kind of a safe deployment. We talked about the 230 kV lines, we talked about the easements, we talked about other permanent facilities that cannot be built around this location. which by itself contributes to the overall safety of this location. And then we also kind of showed some numbers over here based on the actual UL testing, which demonstrates that even if there is an off-gassing, that remains self-contained within the proximity of 5 to 10 feet. This does not really propagate anywhere even close to the plant boundary. So those all advantages and benefits lead to an overall safe deployment.
Thank you. And then also you had mentioned that the site will be decommissioned after 20 years. Could you tell me the reason for that? Is it a safety issue? Is it a regulatory issue? Why is a site decommissioned after 20 years?
Yeah, maybe more accurately would be the batteries are decommissioned after 20 years because the battery, lithium-ion batteries, you know, they don't last indefinitely.
And that shutdown, that disposal is regulated by the state. How does that decommission happen safely?
You know, the project is basically concrete, containers, wires, and a step-up transformer, right? That's the project.
And where do the batteries go?
The batteries go to a recycling program. They pay us money to take the batteries away.
Okay.
First of all, there's two ways to recycle batteries. One is thermally, and the other is chemically. And basically, they break down the lithium-ion batteries into its constituent components, and then they can rebuild more lithium-ion batteries. That's the way it's done. And each one of the battery providers that we've discussed with has a recycling program as part of what they sell. Now, if I can get a better price for my recycled battery from a separate company, I'll do that, obviously.
Okay. Thank you. And then you talked about the possibility, you're talking to the city about a potential microgrid program similar to, say, SMUD or some of these other things are a possibility. Wouldn't that mean that you'd have to keep the plant going, or you would just purchase new batteries, or just how would that look? What would that look like? And what concerns me there, you went over the design, the different types of batteries. What concerns me is here, if you enter into a microgrid program with the City of Vacaville, you then become, well, you're a for-profit business, and there would be an incentive there possibly to actually use some of these less safe batteries. It might be more energy efficient. Maybe the NMC or the NCA. Doesn't that create an incentive for you to use some of the others that you're not using right now?
So let's put it this way. Yes, we are discussing this concept of microgrid. Are we interested? Yes. Does it involve a lot of regulatory work? Yes. I would not say it's piece of cake because everything has to be done within the bounds and confines of the regulatory construct of the state, right? Second is your question about NMC and NCA and why we would not deploy any of those. This is a lot of speculative or speculation involved in this question in that sense, because we are talking 20 years from now. 20 years from now, who knows? None of these technologies exist. Who knows the whole energy industry transitions to something else? Maybe distributed generation comes back, right? So there's a lot of speculation involved in this before I can really answer it in a manner which could satisfy you.
Okay, and finally, one more quick thing, and I'm sorry, Aaron. You are an LLC, is that correct? Not a corporation? You are a limited liability corporation. What does that mean in the event of a crisis, a disaster of some kind? Legally speaking, are you still on the toe for the entire cost and mitigation of whatever occurs, or as an LLC, is Menard allowed to simply walk away and the city is responsible for whatever happens?
I mean, look, now we're getting into the realm of how businesses are set up, not just for Menard, but across the United States. So whatever I respond over here, I'm pretty sure this answer to this question probably goes nowhere. But what I can commit and what I can promise is a safe deployment of a project over here. It is in my best interest to implement something that works for everyone, including myself. Let's put it this way, in a very simplistic manner. Why would I deploy something that leads to a failure and therefore leads to a, let's say, financial loss for me, for insurers? Even the insurers would not underwrite a project which is not safe.
So
So in
Samit,
some sense,
I'm sorry, I appreciate you answering the question in detail. I'm going to ask that you guys tackle that on your website because I really want to make sure we hear from everyone. And I have one more hand I called in the first batch. Then I'm going to move to the middle section, the far section, the outside section, and I'm going to keep moving around the room trying to get as many people's questions and comments out there. So you're next.
Thank you. I guess I just have a couple of concerns. So many people in this room live within the city limits of Vacaville. There are many people in this room who do not live within the city limits of Vacaville, but we're very close to where this facility is being proposed. We don't get to vote for the city council and vote you in or out depending on what your decision is tonight. This affects us directly. We live within 3/4 of a mile of where this facility would go. And it's great to say that you have precautions set up that won't affect us, but we don't know that. You're affecting our property values, you're affecting our safety, and we don't get to vote for you up or down. So that's one of my main concerns. My other concern is that we all know, sitting in this room with the state of California, your contract is built in not with only with the city of Vacaville, but also with PG&E. That Vaca-Dixon substation is very close to all of our homes. We know within the last, let's just say, decade, PG&E has caused a lot of major disasters in the state, and they have not been held accountable at all. We have seen our electric bills triple in the last 3 years because of things that they have caused, that they've been supposedly held accountable for, but they have passed those costs on to us. So how do we know that's not going to happen with this project? We have no safety precautions set up for us. So how are you going to prevent that? And it's great to say you have precautions set up. There's no accountability.
All right. So multi-layered question. I appreciate it. Let me answer first about your question around the cost. Right, a project like this exactly is intended to smoothen out, if not reduce, the cost of electricity for the consumers. What I mean by that is when solar energy is available in excess, I don't know how much you follow the energy industry, but what you know is that prices do go negative. They do go negative in certain hours, and they go extremely high in other hours when the demand is high. The purpose of energy storage is actually to create that balance between demand and supply, so that as a consumer, you do see stable electricity rates. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but that's exactly what this does.
Well, let me just stop for a second, because about a year ago, some of us in this room found out kind of accidentally that PG&E was contracting with another business that supposedly was going to make our electricity cheaper, and the only way we could get out of it was to opt out. If we didn't opt out, we were in. I think it's MSC. Those rates are much higher than PG&E. So it didn't save us anything. They sold a good product, but that's not in reality what happened. So if we weren't smart enough to opt out, we are all paying way more than PG&E, and PG&E is triple. So it sounds good on paper, but in reality, that's not what's happening. And that's what a lot of us in this room are concerned about. Sales and marketing is a great thing, but reality is what we're concerned with.
Look, the one thing that I cannot do is control PG&E's rates. That's a contract between you and PG&E. I can't control that, but I can make electricity cheaper for PG&E.
I'm going to ask that we move on. Again, we'll have a lot of folks to hear from. I'm going to grab 5 hands. And if we debate back and forth, we won't be able to hear from everybody who may have something new to add to the conversation. So because you all are sitting in the front, we're going to go ahead and reward the bravery of being in the front line. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now 1.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Marta McFarland. I've been a resident here for 36 years. I have 2 kids now. I have a comment, a little story, and definitely a question. So you say safety. Safety is the #1 concern. I am the what if. There was a what if on the slide. I was living in the Morgan Park apartments with my family when the Harbison townhomes were built. Many Vacaville residents opposed the project due to zoning. It was supposed to be low-income, affordable senior housing. Now they are luxury apartments. My son was 8 months old when he contracted infant botulism. He was intubated in the Kaiser Hospital, and he almost died because the construction site did not properly mitigate the dust. Therefore, my question is, how will you properly mitigate the dust for the Vacaville residents? And if this is a wastewater facility treatment plant, has the soil been tested? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Marta. I'm going to ask Rob to talk about the dust.
That's a quick one. So yes to both questions. Dust mitigation, is a part of, I mean, it's one of the things that we're required to do. During the construction, obviously, there's going to be some road traffic that's going to come in. There may be dust from that, honestly. Road traffic coming in, trucks, concrete delivery trucks, that sort of thing. Once they're behind the berm, there isn't, dust comes from digging. We're not going to be digging. We're basically going to be putting down concrete pads and then surrounding them with rocks or what we call riprap. What was the second question? I'm sorry. Oh, soil be tested. So the soil is being tested. It's almost been a super fun site.
I can say that the city is actively under order from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. There is water testing, there's soil testing. That's all in the process after the plant closure. That's been the last, I guess, decade or so has been getting the site cleaned and testing it to make sure that it's clean.
Yeah, and something I didn't cover but might be interesting is what happens with stormwater. We don't have any need for water on the site, but what happens with stormwater? It is a basin. The quick answer is I don't know yet, because we've done hydrogeological surveys that we're doing on the site. Honestly, I anticipate it'll probably be a retaining pond that we'll have. So it'll be probably
a retention pond where the water gathers. That's the kind of technical thing that through the NRA, the applicant has to look at all these issues, and if they move forward, there would be a formal proposal with those technical studies he mentioned, as well as with the city's full review process of that. So thank you for those questions, Marta. Who was number 2? Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you. So I just wanted to talk about the what if that you guys had mentioned earlier. So in the safe design piece of it, you guys mentioned this intelligent design called a battery management system, right? Operational technology that's like heavily reliant on sensors indicating when a fire may or may not happen. Recently, I mean, it's pretty well known that ransomware is spreading everywhere, targeting energy sectors pretty heavily. It's not really an if question, it's when. I underwrite this, so it is an if, not when. It's going to happen. And my question, I guess, is what safety processes are in place? Worst case scenario, your entire operational technology is encrypted. How do you slow down a potential thermal runaway with your batteries?
So it's not a human decision that's made at the operations center. If the temperature goes too high, if certain gases are present, that unit shuts down. If it extends beyond that, so what you're suggesting is somebody can somehow get in there and rewrite the programming. Steel.
I'm hearing a question at the back, but we're going to go through these. I'm working my way.
So I mean, these are SCADA systems.
The concern is about how ransomware might affect your operation. I feel like it's a great question, and we got a little bit of an answer here, but I think we need to add it to the city's list and add it to their list, and then get back to you guys in our written.
We're subject to NERC, basically.
Most of us don't know what NERC is, Rob.
We're subject to NERC, and so as such, every power plant has been that I've been building, what I'm on 12 or 15 now, has been subject to the National Electric Reliability Council. And they are very concerned about what you're talking about.
Tanya, you're up.
First thing I wanted to touch on was accountability. Is the city prepared to be accountable when this fails? Because it will. I mean, quite frankly, you're telling us that this is newer technology. However, 7 out of 10 of these storage facilities went up in fire in the first year, in the last year.
I'm not sure.
There were 10 facilities built, 7 of them have burnt in the first year they were built. So again, it's not if, it's when it's gonna burn. And with newer technology, you haven't tested this, you've tested it in a lab. You haven't tested it in Vacaville. You're telling us that wind is better for us. However, we're in a high fire area. We've been deemed a high fire. Somebody already touched on it with our insurance rates. So did you account for fire surrounding your batteries? Are they gonna not catch fire when fire comes through, as it does in California all the time?
Okay, so let me take that one at a time. Let's take your last one, which is, so our entire facility will be, as I said, have vegetative restrictions. There's going to be nothing growing. It's going to be rock. I know there was a nice picture of green grass. It's not going to be grass. It's going to be rock that's down there. So there will be nothing burnable around in the area. Like I said, the setbacks are 70 and 75 feet. The other thing,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but you're saying nothing is burnable. However, these need cooling systems to keep them from burning. If a fire comes through, the fire's going to take out your cooling system, and these are going to catch fire.
What's the fire going to? I'm sorry. What is the fire going to catch on? There's no vegetation
Chemicals.
in the area.
I mean, a tree and an ion battery do not emit the same chemicals. It's just,
Okay,
this
well,
is a safety hazard. I'll finish with my statement. There's other stuff I have because these are other questions, and I'm probably just repeating myself or touching on what other people have stated. You mentioned a sports complex center. I live in North Village. The people in the surrounding area, we don't get rolling blackouts. Our power stays consistent. So what could you possibly offer as an incentive to put us in risk and safety of our families for the next 20 years with our insurance rates going up? What could you possibly offer us? Because the sports complex is not it.
This is, frankly, we're indifferent to whatever the community wants as far as the $20 million commitment to a community benefit. To answer your first question, so the Electric Power Research Institute, EPRI, has identified all the incidents that have happened in the last 12 years, and the number throughout the world is 63. That is the...
Thank you, Rob. I want to respond on behalf of the city to one part of your question, which is about the process of vetting the safety and also the data you shared about battery storage catching fire. The city team, folks sitting behind me, is well aware of the battery storage fires. It feels like there's a lot of them, and we've actively, in fact, our fire marshal's been reaching out to other public agencies that have permitted them to really dig into the details of what happened. But if this project moves forward formally, part of the city's environmental review process would involve a lot of scrutiny on these issues. It may not be completely comforting, Tanya, but that is like the impact of wildfire on the project. All these things would get looked at through a public document that you'd be participating in. So some of the answers we may not have this evening, but this is part of a city council making any decisions about this. The lead up to that is a heck of a lot of more analysis and research. So it doesn't baffle you? No.
I mean, common sense. It doesn't baffle you that we have to go through this process to get through to have the city scrutinized for something that is very common sense. This is close to homes. We want a school. What is it going to do to that? How is it going to impact a school in the area? And we shouldn't even be here tonight. This should have been an automatic no. Thank you.
I really, respectfully, I understand and we really respect that perspective. The fact is, the city council made this decision to go through this NRA process. That's what we're in right now. The city does not decide whether this applicant decides to actually move forward with this proposal. So this meeting is really about hearing from all of you, hearing your concerns and questions, because that should inform whether or not they proceed, how the city staff responds, and how and if this thing even moves forward. So this is why these are really important conversations. But I'm going to go to my fourth hand that I chose. Okay, Mr. Vance. Vance, and then down to you, sir, with that.
I have just 3 real quick questions, and I did my research. I'm a retired fire. This study was done on from fire and explosion suppression of self-ignition of lithium-ion batteries, and it was done by the International Conference of Fire Science and Fire Protection Engineering. If one of these batteries is to catch on fire or start shorting out, what is the containment on each one of those little buildings that you had in your thing? How is that contained? Because when those batteries start burning, they burn at 1,328 degrees and higher when they start doing their raise and growth, and then they also go for the, anyway, I'll go with that one. And then the other question is, we have a CalPeak plant over by the, I don't know if you're aware of that. So, pardon?
The little peaker plant?
Yeah, that was built probably about 15 years ago, and it's supposed to supply energy when, or electricity when the levels get so high that the incoming energy that the plant or that the substation is not getting, it adds to that. And then there won't be any water if, let's say these batteries catch on fire internally. Are those containers able to withstand the 13 to 1400 degree heat that they will produce?
So, yeah. Hello? So to answer your question, that is the purpose of the Underwriters Laboratory Test 9540A, is they literally cause one to catch on fire with adjacent ones. These are, steel containers at the edges of which are some, fire retardant material or whatever. But to pass the test, you need to, it can't ignite the next one. So the point is, one catches fire, it catches fire. Nothing around it does.
But with the container around it, let's say the one battery that does catch fire, will that breach into the, breach out into the air? With the heat that it develops, will it get out of its containment?
To
the container that you put around the batteries.
Right.
With that 1300 to 1400 degree heat that it's generating, when it, will that container keep it inside, or will that melt down?
The heat will go up. Yeah.
No, there is no blowing up. There is no blowing up. The point over here is, the question was whether the fire propagates from one container to the other. The answer is no, because that is the precise purpose of the UL coding that is being required for each of these containers.
Oh, do you?
Behind my house, and it was built, about 15 years ago, and it was supposed to be the auxiliary.
So the question is how the CalPeaker facility impacts energy. Okay. I don't know if you all know the answer to that, if that's something the city should respond to. I don't want you ad-libbing, so I think that's something we need to respond to. I was unaware of that, but we'll absolutely respond to that. It's a great question. Yeah. Thank you for pointing out that question was not touched on. We will definitely get into that. Sir, you're up.
Yeah, I just had a question. Where are these batteries made?
Depends on the manufacturer. There's some made in the U.S.
Are they made in California or Texas or?
So, to the best of my knowledge, there is no manufacturer here in California.
Okay, that's all I would need to know.
Yeah, there's a manufacturer in Oregon and one in Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you.
And then there are also obviously international providers.
Thank you for that question. And I'm going to go back over here now to the next group, and I promise we're going to try to keep working our way around the room. And again, starting at the front, and then I'll start my way in the back once I go outside. So we're going to go 1, 2. Okay, we're having some hands coming up again. 3, 4, and I saw your hand, sir. 5. Okay, so number 1.
Thank you. Appreciate your time here tonight, gentlemen and lady. I'm kind of curious about the fire suppression concept you talk about. So typically on the Tesla packs and Moss Landing, Tesla says you let them burn to the ground. So, because you can't stop them, because they have to discharge all their energy. So my question here is that the process here? And that's why there's no fire suppression, you're just gonna let them burn out, and you're using the UL code to isolate them to a specific cell, so that theoretically that doesn't jump to another one, and another one, you get your thermal runaway taken off, etc. So are you telling me then that after you're finished all this, how do you clean that up? Is there any dry chemical used for fire suppression, or you just let it burn to the ground?
So it depends on the type of fire. We will option in a fire suppression system for a non-battery fire, because like any electrical, you know, you can have a regular electrical fire in a bunch of circuits. That can happen. In that case, we will use a fire suppression. It'll be like a Nomex type thing or a Halon, you know, whatever the modern version of the we take the oxygen away thing. That doesn't help in the case of a battery fire or a
Right.
battery runaway. In that case, if we get to the point where it actually burns down, then we would let it burn down within that container.
Okay, so let's roll the tape forward. So you're using a chemical of some sort. So at some point in time, the fire department comes and they put copious amounts of water on this site, or they clean it all up. Or I don't know how you're going to do it. Okay, so my problem is there's no guarantee to me that you're not going to use water at some portion of cleanup here. You can't tell me you're not going to do that. So this was a site that was contaminated because of not having a liner. What would you think about putting an HDPE liner under the site and basically having a way to capture any water? And then, and also to your point earlier, you talked about the water removal, because you're in a berm, so you basically a dry pit, but right now it's going to seep into the ground. So anything that's, any materials that come off that site are going to go right into the groundwater, the way it is right now.
An HDPE liner sounds great.
Yeah, so.
I don't have any
at the very
objection to
least,
that.
yeah, exactly, okay. I'm kind of curious too about
It's just like the pond.
something that was I read in your city council report dated January 10th, says Vistra Energy is the owner-operator of the Moss Landing facility and is being brought in as a partner on this. Yeah, but let me finish this, because it says, and I don't know the terminology here, but it said, it led me to believe, it says Vistra Energy will take the lead on this Gibson Creek project if approved and become the long-term owner-operator for PG&E. So are you guys committed to this project from start to finish? Are you basically operating as a venture capitalist and looking at an exit strategy, flipping it to Vistra, or how's this going to work?
Originally, when the council approved the ENRA, Menard Energy, with whom the city has the exclusive negotiating agreement, had identified Vistra as their partner. And then after the ENRA was executed, Ampere was brought in as the partner, and Vistra is no longer involved. But I will ask these gentlemen just to respond to this question about, are you all doing this to hand it off to somebody else? I mean, I guess, what's your intention? And you'll share your intention, and people may or may not believe or hear it, but just please answer that question. That would be great.
No, we are in here for the long haul. We are the long-term owners, operators of the facilities. So we are not one of those fly-by developers who would come in and flip.
Just related to that, okay, so my concern is, you spoke earlier about a 20-year life cycle for this project. We all know that with NuScale and other, mini modular nuclear plants, et cetera, putting on 50 megawatts, they're going to be out within 5 years as commercial products. So how are we to know that this is not going to be something you guys walk away from at some point in time, because it's not economically viable? And we'd like to have some sort of bond posted or an escrow for us to know that this place can get cleaned up or dismantled or do whatever is required long term, so our interests are protected.
So I think two things over there. One, obviously, this project will be developed and built in accordance with all the permitting requirements and the conditions that are imposed on the project. So there is no walking away from that. Second is your first question, which is whether we can walk away from the project. The short answer is no. The simple reason over there being because the project will be a party to a contract, a long-term contract with the off-taker. And you don't just walk away, or you cannot walk away from those contracts for convenience. You just cannot.
I just want to add also that should this applicant move forward with this proposal, city staff have identified the need for a development agreement, which would be between the city and the developer, which would also set forth certain requirements. But David, these are great questions. I want to remind everyone that if you scan the QR code on your agenda, if you've got a burning question and you just want to make sure it's on the city staff's radar, it's on the council's radar, it's on their radar, you are welcome through our website to submit those questions. You can do that during the meeting, you can do it after the meeting. We're really trying to collect as many questions as we can get so that we can start looking at what the answers are. But those were some really great questions, David. Were you my next person in sequence?
It was answered.
Your question was answered. Thank you. That's great. Okay, and who is next, please? I had two more, I think. There you go.
Just for everybody's record, the wastewater treatment plant site here
is only contaminated with common, ordinary calcium and magnesium, the little white stuff that you have as the water spots. What happened is that the wastewater came over there into those ponds, and because of evaporation and percolation, it left behind the calcium and the magnesium, the water hardness, the water spots. That is the contamination. Has everybody got that? Okay. That being said, I have lived for the last 37 years down Mills Lane. And for the last 37 years, I have watched beavers make dams over there. And I've watched the river otters play in DeLewis's backyard. And I'm pretty sure that there's some biological stuff happening like red-legged frogs, tiger salamanders in that creek. Now that's interesting that you want to go and put this over there by there, because you might have to mitigate that, and I'm pretty sure you're not really looking at that creek that's on your southern and eastern boundaries. The other thing that really bothers me is that you guys are giving us the impression you're really lazy. And the reason for that is that the two of you can sit here and fight for this site when in fact you know that it's going to be surrounded by homes. You know we're not going to like that. And you know that if there is ever a fire or something, 3 Tesla batteries at one time. Have you not seen a video of just one car fire and you're going to put 3 of them together? And you're going to tell me that they're going to go 15 feet? No, I'm not going to buy that for a thing. It took the county and the city up there in Sacramento something like 3,000 gallons of water for 1 Tesla battery trying to put it down. And you got 3 in a box? Why don't you do something for me? Why don't you go and put a little more energy into looking at the 200 to 300 miles of high tension wires all over this wonderful county of ours? And why don't you go out there and find some homeowners, some landowners, I should say, that have maybe 40 acres. And you find that 40 acres and you talk to them about putting your battery site over there. Now, you say that you need to have a substation. Well, for the $20 million and plus the $2 million, $3 million that you're bribing the city of Vacaville with for a park, you can build a heck of an electrical substation of your own. You do not need Dixon. And don't say that you do, because that's not really true. You don't need Dixon substation. You know it and I know it.
Actually, we do, right? Because you probably understand the cost involved in long transmission lines and Gentile lines. That does increase the rate for the ratepayers and the common man and the consumer, right? So that's why we find the optimal locations, which tries to reduce the overall cost of electricity for consumers like yourselves.
I want to get into debate, so if you have one last thought, please share it.
Just one thing. Haven't you ever heard of a drop line? You go over to a transmission tower, like we did on our property in Shasta, and granted it cost us $30,000 to shut down a 12,000 kV volt line for them to drop down for our ranch. You can drop down, put in your own little substation, and feed back up those power lines. You know it, and I know it.
I'm going to take that as a comment because I want to make sure we hear from others. Who was my last? You were my last hand. Thank you. Oh, sir, you are, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so I hear, like, when you're talking about this, like, you're still kind of unclear between 2 types of batteries, because there's this new coming one, which I don't know much about batteries, but all the fires I've seen and everything. Also, I'm concerned about, well, people are saying, well, there's some companies that are making batteries in the U.S. What I've been hearing about it is the companies that are making batteries in the U.S. are actually China run. So that you really need to look into, because a lot of these that are coming in, they're having provisions that they must support the CCP, that those companies, and that's why one of those companies was going to happen, I think it was in Michigan, that they were trying to put one there and people stood up and said no, because in the bylaws of that company, it said they had to follow the CCP rules. And now I've just recently heard there's a company somewhere, and it may be, I don't know, it may be Maine or Massachusetts, and that people are talking about, it is influenced by CCP. So if there is anything that has any China in it, I don't care what funny names you use, we don't want it here. Okay? Also, all of this sounds theory. Is there any other battery plant or storage facility that you guys have made this size that is functioning and has not had any problems? And when these things do, you're talking all this fancy heat. Well, heat leaves in various forms. You have smoke. There's going to be something in that smoke. I'm sorry. Most of the times, that smoke is black. Okay? Now, we're talking, okay, those of us that have farms, we have all of our animals outside. What is going to happen to our animals? Those of us that are farming, what's going to happen to their crops? What's going to happen to the farmland? What's going to happen to the water around? Those are those people that have asthma and all these other issues. What's going to happen to them? I have a lot of concerns, and I just can't believe this is going on tonight.
Thank you for sharing your concerns. I want to make sure we get to hear from more folks. I want to remind everyone you can submit the comments and questions online, but I want to get to the next group of hands. There's a bunch of folks outdoors. So, oh, Mister, I'm so sorry. You're sitting right there with spectacular silver hair. I don't know how that's there. No, you're not. Please.
Everybody teaches their kids nowadays, no means no. In 2020, the answer was no. Why are we revisiting this?
This really was revisited in January of this year, January of 23, when the council authorized the NRA to explore this use. Again, did not decide to do the thing, just decided to explore it. So you can read the staff report, you can watch the meeting, but it is something that occurred in January of this year, and that's why we're here this evening. Did you have one more question?
As far as the $20 million, is there anybody in this room can tell me what you did with the last $20 million that was given to you? I can't.
Thank you very much, sir. Great question. I'm going to go back out here. Does anyone out here have any hands out here? Okay. Is my mic going to work as I go out here? Let's find that out. So,
maybe.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I've been waiting for like a little while.
A lot of people have been waiting, so we'll have to wait your turn. Sir, please right here.
Well, good evening. My name is Richard Cruz. I've been involved with this community for roughly about 10 years now, and I'm actually here in support of the, I'm sorry, I can't even pronounce it, Menard Energy. I almost said Menard, excuse me. There are concerns involving battery storage facilities. That's apparent, but I appreciate the developer being here and listening to all of us in this open line of communication. There's safety concerns, and this open line of communication is a good step forward. It's the right step forward, and I appreciate you guys keeping this line of communication open with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Let's go out to number 2. Sir.
Oh, okay. So I have a concern that this is even, the city of Vacaville is even considering money over safety. It's always follow the money. Did people forget that Vacaville lies on a fault line? What are you going to do in the case of an earthquake? It's not a matter of if, but when. What are you going to do when it's more than one battery that catches fire? You have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 batteries catching fire. What are you going to do? Who is ultimately going to be responsible for when this does happen? Who? Is it going to be the city? Is it going to be Maynard? Who?
Thank you for the question. And just at a high level, if there's an incident, the city is a responder. And that's part of why city staff have a lot of questions about the proposal. A lot of them originating from our fire department, public safety side of things. But that is a great question. Do you have anything else that you want to ask or add?
I'd also like to know where Also, where are you getting this lithium and cobalt from?
There is no cobalt. The lithium, there are, in the U.S., Silver Peak in Nevada is one source of lithium. The other source is in Kings Mountain, North Carolina. There are, of course, offshore.
Yeah, that's
a lot
China.
from South America is where a lot of the lithium
done by
comes
strip
from.
mining. Have you ever seen a strip mine?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's green?
Most lithium is actually found in alkaline aquifers. These are non-drinkable aquifers like Silver Peak. It's not strip mined. They basically poke a hole in the ground and pump water down, or just suck up the water that's there and then let it dry in ponds.
So you're saying that lithium is not strip mined?
Some is, but the lithium in the U.S. right now, the operational facility, for example, in Silver Peak is one area. It's not strip mined. It's basically you suck up brine and you put it out and allow it to dry in the sun, and then they take it in and concentrate it and remove the impurities, and that's the source of lithium. And again, the cobalt is an issue. I grant you, but we don't use cobalt. It's lithium iron phosphate is the technology that we're looking at. So lithium, as I said, is we're going to get it from wherever it is in the market, but most of it's either South America or here in the U.S.
Yeah, but you're also probably, like I always say, follow the money. You're going to get it from the cheapest place possible.
Of course.
Which is China.
Well, here's the thing. We're not buying lithium. We're buying batteries. And there are a number of battery manufacturers that are out there. Some certainly are from China. But there are U.S. battery manufacturers that are there. So
we've heard several questions about the source of the batteries, so we'll be reaching out to the team to put together more information on that.
We can put together more
Do you have any final questions or comments? I want to get to a few more folks.
Well, I would just like to know what they plan to do in case of an earthquake.
I know
it's a great question, but there's no...
Part of what happens if this project actually is formally filed with the city is we'll be preparing what's called environmental impact reports. So we have geotechnical studies, we have experts evaluating all this, and it's the city that's preparing the document. It's not the developer. So these are the kind of things that get looked at if this becomes a formal proposal. So those are great questions that can be answered, but they would be answered as part of a formal review process.
But,
the short answer is it'll be built to D0 or D1 seismic zone.
Okay, but just, I think I could pretty much speak for everybody here, and pretty much City of Vacaville, we do not want this here. This should not even be considered. And also, if I could just add too.
Happy to.
Okay. That the City Council answers to us. The City Council works for us. We, as the people, have the final say, not the City Council. They work for us.
Who was my next hand? Sorry. I know you were one of my hands. Thank you. Come over to you.
Okay, my questions are real simple. The first one is, I don't want us to become a love canal. We all know what that is. So, and property values, major concern. The first fire goes on the news, drops. And to pay for the insurance, oh my God, it's already too high now. You basically can't get insurance. They're blocking us out from all these insurers. So my question is this. When that first fire goes up, I love Tesla, sorry guys, but when the first fire goes up and those batteries burn hot and that sucker comes out and that black smoke, like that lady said, gets into the air and your children, your senior citizens are nearby, you won't know for many years if there's some sort of problem, cancer, etc. So my question is, are you going to jump on that? What's your response time for getting that contained? I know you want it to burn out. I want to know the response time so that there is no release of anything into the air, and you should have a study to make sure that you can contain those containers, period. That's my first question, is what's your response time? Are you going to make sure, because if you're going to be safe, make those suckers safe and spend whatever you have to make them safe for those poor farmers there in the farm areas and those senior citizens that have paid your way all these years and lived here for 35, 40 years. I know I've lived here for like 35, and I am a senior. So I just wanted to tell you, I want to know the response time, how quickly, if you're not on site, how quickly you're going to shut those suckers down online, and if there is I know about the technology part of it, if someone does hack in, you have to have that on site immediately. You cannot wait. So I'd like to know if you could do that, send that information, is to find out how long it takes to shut them down and how long it takes if there's a hacker to make sure they're online and stay online. And my second question, don't take offense to anyone by this question, is would you have your grandma living in that house that's the closest to it, that's in that big circle around it, that 1 mile radius, which I understand from all the emails I've gotten, which is the evacuation zone 1 mile? And is the 4 mile zone the people that have to stay in place in their house? I want to know, would you feel comfortable having your grandma or your little grandchildren living in that house, those poor people that live the closest to it, on that little corner on the circle? Okay, that's what I want to know, because I don't think the answer is yes.
Answer is yes.
All right, so excellent question. Number of questions out there, and I'll try to answer most of those. But I'll kind of start with my personal story. So I live in California. I live in Southern California. And my house is surrounded by freeways. I've got 5 freeway. I've got 605. I've got 91. I've got 110. What I breathe over there is dirty smoke coming from fossil fuel. And that's what we are trying to clean up over here. That smoke that comes from vehicles is more dangerous than anything that you'll see out here. Second, we talked about safety. These things we are committed to safety, and the design and the codes have evolved, which is what Rob was trying to articulate in one of the slides. What I mean by that is, if you look at the deployments in the past, there were different technologies. They were done in warehouses or buildings, and now we have moved to a container solutions, which don't propagate fire from one to the other. And even if it happens, we are conscious about that. And what the slide depicted was, in a worst case, what you're seeing getting emitted is carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. And that is not going to show up even at the project boundary, or rather it won't even show up at 15 feet away. The notion of this having toxic substances is a bit of, let's say, a lack of full awareness. Let's kind of put it that way. What I can tell is, if an Amazon warehouse went on fire, or if somebody's house went on fire, what would come out over there is going to be way more dangerous than anything that you'll see over here, because you're in a residence and you're close proximity to the fire. Something like this is not going to be anywhere close to even a house going on fire in terms of what comes out. So let's kind of believe in science and give ourselves a chance in that regard to be looking at it from an open mind and believing in what the numbers are and what the science is.
Sumit, there were 2 questions she asked, one of which I'd like to see if you all can answer, and the second one I want to put on our list. The first question was, how long does it take you to respond if there's something going wrong with the battery? And if you could answer as succinctly as possible, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, the quick answer is it's a SCADA system, and it's virtually instantaneous. As soon as, if it's a voltage fluctuation, as soon as it exceeds whatever the parameters are for that fluctuation, it cuts it off. It isolates that.
It's microseconds, I would say?
Microseconds. Yeah.
Microseconds. Thank you for answering that question. I don't think we have time to get into this question, but I think that's a legitimate question. Is there a way to design a battery storage facility where there is no release of carbon monoxide because nothing actually leaves the containment unit? So I don't think we can get into that right now, because I want to make sure we hear from a few more folks with the time we have left, but I just want to make sure that that's on your guys' radar. Who else out here had their hand up? You, ma'am? Yes? You too? Okay, we'll go one after the other.
Okay, when the fire happened at the battery storage in Moss Landing, the people who lived around there smelt the fire, went outside before anybody was notified. I live feet away, 600 feet away from this facility. How am I going to get notified? How is the lady who lives 450 feet away in 4-stage dementia gonna get notified? Another thing I would like to ask is if we can get the schematics from Moss Landing and the schematics for what you propose to build here so we can see the new technology? Because right now, it's not new technology, it's simply trial and error.
Thank you for those two comments / questions. I believe that we can work on responses to those, and I appreciate them. You had your hand up, and then I want to go back to the main room.
Yes, first of all, I have a comment. I've spent an endless amount of time searching for long-term effects these facility fires have on our groundwater. I've been unable to find any studies research this facility. This facility is going to be built next to a creek, residential, and city wells. So if the city can find something, I have spent months looking for this, so I'd certainly like to hear what it would be. Now, what is your mitigation plan when the batteries catch fire and the water runoff from the sprinkler system pollutes the groundwater, which it will? There's going to be toxic fumes, and the old saying is, what goes up must come down.
So to answer your question, we're not proposing any water sprinkler system. So
Were you my last here? Rob, there's no water sprinkler
they're
system.
containerized, and the containers will be removed when the project's done.
I think on the other question, I think the city staff can commit to looking for other comparable facilities near creeks, wells, and houses. So I think that was a great question on the part of that person back there, and I can certainly add that to the city's list of things to explore. I want to do a time check, but I assure you we can stay longer. It is 7:54 p.m. We've advertised this meeting to end at 8. I know there are people here that do plan to depart at 8, and I want to let you know that that's totally fine. The city team and the applicant team can stay for a while longer because, again, we have time. But I want you to know if you feel like you're trapped here, you don't have to be trapped here. You can leave. We do have the ability for you to ask questions online, provide comments online, send in your comments, and again, those are all ways you can communicate with the city and the applicant. So I just want to make sure that you all are very clear on that. Just don't say anything. Position.
Yeah, listen, I'm Roy Stockton. I'm your Vacaville council member for District 1. I live in this district. I can't comment on anything that's being said tonight, but what I can say is I've been at city council meetings that go past midnight. I came here to hear from every single one of you and the folks that are also proposing the project, and I will stay here as long as I can to hear what you have to say, whether or not anybody else does. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Stockton.
Because I've never seen this many people show up for an event, and we talk about, well, hold on a second. We talk about wanting to get community engagement, and everybody's here. So I would like to be graceful with the amount of time that we're going to give. If we need to stay later, I would really appreciate it if we gave everybody an opportunity that's here to ask the questions that they need to ask.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Stockton. So I'm going to go back to this side of the room, work my way backward to forward. And if you've spoken before, you're going to have to send in your comments. I'm going to go one. I did the front to back. Now I'm going to start at the back, and I'm going to come. Okay. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 1.
Okay, I just had a question regarding the exclusive negotiating rights agreement. I understand that that was entered into in January between Menard and the city. When that agreement, is it not? Okay. When it's up, who decides whether or not it gets renewed and extended? And if Menard wants it and the city doesn't want it, are there any negative implications the city will be facing if they decide not to move forward with extending that request?
Thank you. I don't know the exact extension mechanisms, but what I can tell you is for the life of the agreement, the city is not obligated to sell the property to this developer. There's no obligation. It merely is an exclusive negotiation between this particular party in the city. We can't talk to other people about the property through the duration of the agreement. On our FAQs, I can answer the question about the extensions. I can't remember how they happen, but there's 2 limited time period extensions that are built into the original agreement. What was your other question?
And if Menard wants it and the city doesn't, and clearly the citizens of the city don't seem to want it, are there any negative implications for the city if they, can they face lawsuit or?
There's nothing in the agreement that obligates the city to approve this project. Because fundamentally, it's city-owned, essentially, there's city, that I will look into, but it's city-owned land. The city is only allowed to talk to these folks about them potentially purchasing the property, but if we decide not to as a city, if the council decides not to, that's it. So, and I will get more information on those extensions on the website. 2.
My question has to do with the fact that this is only good for 20 years. And always when you put something new in, there's a lot of cost to putting it in. So in the beginning, we have to pay. Somehow you've got to make your money back on this, right? Well, how are we going to save money when this thing has to be paid off first? And by the time it gets paid off, to me, it seems like you got to tear it apart and take it out. 20 years is really a short period of time. How come you just don't replace these batteries as they wear and, keep the plant going? It just, you have a lot of upfront costs. That's what I'm saying. How do we save money if you've got to take care of all this upfront cost? How is Vacaville residents gonna come out ahead? Because a lot of this new technology is really expensive, and people have been promised it'll save them some money, but they wind up having to pay the windmills off, and they wind up, having to pay all this stuff off. So I still kind of don't see how it's going to help us, and especially in 20 years, what's going to happen? How are we going to take care of that energy we're going to lose too? If it's such a good deal, why aren't you just replacing the batteries as they wear out?
So
for us.
Quite a complicated question, and I think the answer is probably more complicated than the question itself, because now we're getting into the realm of the regulatory construct of the energy industry in the US, not just California. What I mean by that is, under this contract, it's not like, let's say we get into a contract with an off-taker, let's say it's PG&E, right? So PG&E is not paying for the capital cost of this equipment, unlike if PG&E were to be building a power plant on their own. So think about it that way. If they build the power plant on their own, they have the right under the regulatory construct to charge the capital cost to the consumers. But if I am building it, that capital cost is not getting passed on, let's say, to the consumers directly by PG&E. Second, what we need to understand over here is that right now California and also other states are seeing a significant imbalance between the supply and demand, such that during the hours when generation is happening, the consumption is not happening, which means there is wastage and inefficiencies. That's what we are trying to eliminate using energy storage, and that eventually leads to a reduction in the overall cost of electricity for the consumers. So I can get into more details around that, but I just wanted to leave it simplistically at that level.
I think the question really is about sort of the financial model that your premise is based on. I think that's something we can ask you to help us respond to after the meeting. Who was my next hand? Sure, thank you. I'm moving over here.
No problem.
Very hot hand.
I have 2 questions, one for Menard and one for the city. For Menard, it's a yes or no question. The reason why you're revisiting this piece of property after looking at it and being told no in 2020 is because it's cheaper for you to build it there, correct?
I can answer this because in 2020, well, I got to be honest over here, right? I got to be honest over here because in 2020, I was not in this project. You probably heard about the history of the project, and at one point, Vistra being in discussions on the project, I was just not around there. So yes, I expect you to answer me yes or no, but if I have to be honest to myself and to you all, I can say I don't know because I was not there in 2020 as part of this project.
Then forget about 2020. The reason why you're looking at it now is because its location to the substation, which will make it cheaper for you. Is that correct?
Sure. It is cheaper for you as well,
not for me. Not for me. No. For you.
Let me answer that question. If this project were to be built at a suboptimal location, ultimately PG&E is going to recover the cost from you, right? So this project has to make, and I don't do that, right? This is done by CAISO. CAISO has a process on which they basically optimize the entire generation assets across California. So this is an optimization exercise aimed at reducing cost for everyone.
Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Now for the city and whomever, apparently in 2020, Vacaville said no. I would like to know specifically Why did we say, yes, let's look at it in 2023?
I'm going to answer that by saying that the city council meeting where the decision was made is literally online, and you can watch the video of the staff presentation, you can watch the council discussion, you can watch the people who stood up and said, we want this sports facility, we think this is a great idea, and all of that is a matter of public record, and anyone here can go on their phone right now and look at it. I'm just going to say that's the... And so, but part of why we put on our website, the city's website, all the staff reports, the date of the meeting, et cetera, is that you can access the discussions and the considerations. Well, what I'm suggesting, though, is that there is a transparency to these decisions. And again, I would just encourage you all to watch these videos, because fundamentally, at a public meeting that is recorded, not to be lost in the sands of time, all of the council's discussion and deliberations around this, it can be viewed. So, but in essence, they did decide to enter into the NRA in 23. And that is, that's a matter of public record. Did you have any last questions? I want to make sure to continue.
No, I just want the answers, that's all.
Yeah. Okay, so, so I want to say, who was my last, were you my, no, you were, yeah, thank you. I'm going to go around this way, sorry.
Hi, I've been a Vacaville citizen for a little over 20 years. I've lived through 3 major catastrophes, actually more than that, but 2 major earthquakes that destroyed our towns and flooding that turned Monterey Peninsula into an island. And so don't tell me that it's not going to happen. We're going to have earthquakes, we're going to have problems, and you keep saying that we can't use water. Are you going to build us a tank that holds the chemical to put this crap out, so that our fire department can just come hook up to it and blow it out? Or are they going to have to hold on to all this chemical, and we're going to have to eat the cost for it? Because one of these containers, okay, your diagram was great for one container, but the chances of one container burning is pretty slim. 10% is going to knock out the freeways. 10% of your facility burning would close the 80, close the 505. That would stop production of this town in the millions, if not billions, depending upon how long it burned. One little one wouldn't matter. But we're not talking just one here. And I've lived through disasters. I'm 67 years old. My other question is, why can't the districts in this town vote on this instead of the city deciding? Why can't we put it on a ballot?
Yeah. I want to start with the referendum question. The city council is the decision maker because the property is in the city of Vacaville and the city owns the property. So it's not just that it's, but I'm getting on here. So if the council were to approve the project or to approve the sale, there is a method where the voters can in fact petition and run a referendum. So I just want to let you know the democratic process has many different ways of getting to what you're suggesting. So it's not that it's a no-go. And then, can you talk about the chemicals? I don't remember there were chemicals, but
there are no chemicals. I mean, there's.
The fire out with lack of oxygen.
No, so as I said before, if a unit goes up, if it happens, it will let it burn. As somebody said, you know, what happened in...
And if 10% of the facility goes up, we're just going to let it burn and close the 80 and the 505 for the weeks and weeks it takes to burn out? Have you stood 75 feet from a fire? I have.
So look, I mean, this is where we were trying to articulate early on, that as these technologies have matured, the designs and the codes and the rules around this have changed. I can see where your thought process is coming from. We have seen older technologies and older plant designs have issues, but we have moved on from that. The industry has moved on, and if I go with the statistics, the more recent statistics are the probability, or not probability, but the instances is less than 0.5%, and that too is driven by the older technologies, not newer generation of technologies. So that's one. Second, the whole purpose of the redesign of the containers is to make sure that there is no propagation of fire. So in that sense, the question around 10% of the facility, a little bit hypothetical in that sense.
So you're telling us the fire department just wouldn't respond because they can't put it out?
They would isolate, well, again, we haven't completed a fire response or emergency response plan. That's something that we would have to be in discussion with the city about, or the Vacaville Fire Department about. Our proposal at this point, based on the science that the industry has, is to allow it to burn. And again, the way it's designed and the testing rigor that it goes through is one unit goes up and it doesn't affect the units around you.
Rob, I'm going to ask if does fire want to say anything about response or about your initial thoughts on the project. I see two of you up there. We have a panel. We've had most of the applicants' perspectives this evening.
It's am I on?
Yes.
Okay. So it's really a complicated question with not a real simple answer. And the reason I say that is because, as Menard was saying, it's all hypothetical at this point. So I just came back from, a couple weeks ago, I was at Fire Chiefs Conference, and this is a main point of topic amongst fire chiefs and the fire service in the country because these facilities are popping up all over the country. So definitely, us as the fire service, my number one priority, or our number one priority for the city and the surrounding area is public safety. So you have, number one, you have our guarantee that we will not let anything or approve anything that we think is, that is too high risk. So to answer your question as far as fire suppression, it's all going to depend on, number one, the type of battery that they use. And we're going to make sure that before we allow anything like this to be placed within the city, we're going to make sure that all of that we have a good emergency response plan in place and the fire suppression systems that are in place prior to that. So like I said, it's not, there's no simple answer because we don't know what type of batteries are going to be used. We got to make sure that we have good access. We've got to make sure that we have the right equipment to respond to the type of batteries that they're going to use.
I want to thank you, Chief, but I also want to make the point that the city's review process, if this becomes a formal proposal, involves all this technical analysis, looking for technical solutions, looking to minimize risk, et cetera. Regardless of where staff ends up with our expertise and our work on this, fundamentally, the city council has the final decision of yes or no. And even if every technical question is answered, they are still under no obligation to sell the property, under no obligation to authorize the facilities. I just want to make that really clear because that's a super important thing. This isn't just some random private property. It's a city-owned property, and it requires a lot of process with the city.
Who's going to pay for the equipment? Them, if we have to upgrade our fire department?
That would be looked at as part of the development review process. We always look at fire. Jill Childers, our fire marshal, under the authority of the chief, they always are looking at that stuff as part of private development proposals. I want to go to the back of the room here. I know I've got some irritated folks who feel like they've been waiting a long time. I'm going to go back here, there, and then back there again. So, sir, 1, 2, you in the blue, 3, you in the blue, 4, you, sir, and then 5. And please remember your numbers. It's getting late. So, sir.
So I just want to focus on the 20 years. I've been here in Vacaville for 32 years, and I really desperately love this town. And I know how fast 20 years goes. In the process of me being here for 20 years, I've seen how developers come into our town, and they will say, we're going to develop a low-density housing, and it's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. About halfway through the process, they get to it, and they realize, oh, we can't make a profit on this. And they come back to the city, they cry to the city, and they have to, next thing you know, you have high-density housing behind you. So that's where I'm going with the 20 years. You mentioned that in 20 years it'll be, this development will end, and then it will be restored back to its original state. What I don't understand is how is that, what is our guarantee that's going to happen? And beyond that, I'm concerned that once you guys get into an agreement where you have your foot in the door, what's to say you get halfway through and you realize, oh, I can't make a profit at the density that we have. We have to have more of these facilities put into this area so we can create a profit. And the next thing you know, we have a town that's known for the state's largest battery facility because you got your foot in the door and you need to make a profit. I don't know if there's a question with that, but if you can address that, that'd be great.
I actually think this question about the decommissioning the facility after 20 years, what happens with the property, why wouldn't there be a continuation of the use, is a very legitimate question. I would like to get a thoughtful answer to that and put that on our city website, because I think it's more complicated than we have time to discuss tonight. I did hear the applicants say they would have a contract with the energy provider, PG&E, which would be the 20-year thing, but then after they're done with that, they own this piece of land, what would happen next? So I'm going to acknowledge that question, and I would like to keep moving. You in the blue, then you in the blue are on my list. Thank you. Here you go.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. My first question is, how long does it take one of those batteries to burn out? You already said the fire department basically locks everybody out. How long are we talking? Days, weeks, months?
So a similar facility in New York burned for about 22 hours.
And that same size, 3 Tesla batteries?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my second question, which you did your slide with your test that you talked about when they lit it purposely on fire, but your slide went to 4 chemicals, and you said it was only warming up, not a fire. What chemicals are released when it's on fire during that 22 hours?
So, yeah, that's actually a very good point. The hydrogen is part of the combustion process, and hydrogen, when it burns, the constituents are water and heat. But what's left with the other things is basically CO and CO2. Then the other parts of the combustion is similar to what you have in a house fire. There are some, obviously the container has some plastics, some sheathing around electrical wires, things like that. Again, the same things you'd have in your house. House fire has potentially more because there are other chemicals that don't exist in our facility that do exist in a house or a Amazon warehouse.
House fire, do you have a list of the ones that yours will be producing?
So yes, we do. Hang on a second, I can tell you. Nitrogen dioxide, some volatile organic compounds, HCl at about 7 parts per million, hydrogen bromide peaks at 16 parts per million, hydrogen fluoride peaks is about 30 ppm, hydrogen chloride at about 40 ppm, NH3, which is ammonia, and then various NOx, NO and NO2.
The only clarification or qualification I'll add to that is what Rob just mentioned is the constituents. That does not mean that these constituents are going to show up 10 feet or 15 feet or 50 feet away from the source.
Does those chemicals go for do those chemicals go for the ones you listed, the parts you listed, is that for the duration of the 22 hours? That's in totality, that's it?
Well, so there's a peak concentration for a short period of time with some of these things, and then as those plastics and stuff burn off, they're gone. So they're generally that early, what ends up burning for the longest period of time is the battery. The stuff around the battery burns up really quickly, and they're talking about minutes to like a half an hour for most of the other stuff. Then what you're left with is CO and CO2 coming off the batteries.
None of which actually at the plant boundary or even 50 or 80 feet away would be
We're going to actually
measured.
ask that we get a written response to this, and also the comparison between a burning battery and a house was brought up by the applicant, but I feel like it's a legitimate question, like what the difference is, the duration, the chemicals, et cetera. So I don't speak all the chemicals he's talking about, but we can definitely write this up.
Before you vote and mail
Well,
to us surrounding residences.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, we're not doing, there's no voting. Yeah, right now we're just getting this out here early in the process, and we'll be moving forward. You are next. This gentleman he has the floor.
How will this benefit the community at all? The lithium-ion batteries are an incredibly inefficient way of energy storage. If every factory on the planet, that whether it makes refrigerators, lithium-ion batteries, tires, whatever, started making lithium-ion batteries for 425 years, non-stop, that's still not for Europe for one winter. How will that help? How will enough to charge 1,500 Teslas be enough to help a town that has over 100,000 residents?
So the Vacaville grid The Vacaville grid is about 140 megawatts. Insofar as we have a 400 megawatt project site that could provide power. 4 hours, and then since we have, I mean, if we
Actually, the Vacaville load is 140 megawatts. This is 400, so it's almost like 16 hours.
Yeah, it would be for 16 hours.
Okay, you, sir, were on my first list here. There you go.
My question's for the fire department here tonight. Training. You guys are properly trained to respond to this already, or you will need to train your staff? And who will be funding that? Who will be paying for this training? Is this thing talking?
Could be
All right.
development.
Next up is the shit I forgot. I don't like being in front of a crowd. Let's put it that way. How many firefighters are needed to respond to a call like this with a, and you don't have to answer this tonight, but how many firefighters are you guys anticipating needing? Do you guys already have that staff? Training for the fire department. Are they funding it? Are the taxpayers funding this stuff? And you guys already answered the rest of my stuff.
Chief Concepcion, do you want to take a stab at this, or do we want to add this to our ever-growing list of website responses?
Yeah, as far as the training question, this is a pretty quickly evolving technology as far as batteries are concerned. So as with anything in the fire service, we do have to train for it. We're not completely adequately trained for a plant like this because we don't have one here in our city. So we would have to get that training, and we would make sure that that would be part of the agreement if something like this were to be approved, as far as who pays for that.
Thank you for answering the question. And I'm going to go start at the back here, and then, oh, you were. Are you number 5? Okay, thank you very much for reminding me. It's getting late.
All right, I just want to say, like, she had mentioned that we don't have rolling blackouts here, so we really don't need you. My question is, I was wondering if this has anything to do with the thousands of acres that are being bought around Solano County for your power company.
Yeah, no, is it Silicon Valley? Who's doing that?
No, that's Solano County, yeah.
Yeah, no,
It's
the
all in
stuff
Solano
around the Air
County,
Force
so
Base.
Somehow that's going to have to be powered.
Short
so-
answer is we have no association and nothing to do with that procurement of land that
And we can guarantee
I hear
that.
in news. I've not read, I know something is going on, but we have nothing to do with that.
Okay.
I read it in the same blogs you do.
You were 5, yes? Okay. I'm going to go back here, and then we're going to go back. You've been waiting. I'm waiting for like an hour. So have many other people, sir. We've all been waiting a long time. Here you go.
Thank you. My first concern was a question for gentleman for the gentleman from Menard. So my question would be, would you be prepared to accept criminal and/or civil liability in the case of a disaster or accident or something of that sort happening? Because I'd like to remind you that this is being constructed near a community college as well as a hospital, so those are vulnerable areas, and I would like to ask, would your company be prepared to accept that criminal and/or civil liability?
All right, so the short answer to that is welcome to United States of America. Lawsuits happen every single day. Companies get sued for criminal and other kind of liabilities. Can I prevent anyone from suing me? No, I cannot.
And the second question is, so as many folks mentioned, is there a reason this is being built specifically in a residential zone near a community college near this hospital? Is there, other than being in close proximity to the substation, is there a reason that this is being
So let me answer that question. I know this proximity thing has come across multiple times, and one thing that I'd like to bring up is that these technologies are inherently safe. Incidents, do they happen? Yes, but these are inherently safe. I can actually take the time, personal time, to show people around deployments which have happened in highly dense areas. I personally have developed battery storage projects right in the middle of populous areas in Los Angeles. That's because those technologies have been deemed safe and they've gone through the permitting and the approval processes. Now, what is happening today is that the threshold for safety is improving, it's increasing. And that's why you're seeing the change in the codes, that's why you're seeing the change in the equipment and the way the equipment is designed. Also, what is changing is previously the deployments, as we talked about in warehouses, that's no longer acceptable. And therefore, what we're deploying is more modular units, which bring in this element of safety to the overall deployment.
Yes, I was just wondering, so the gentleman from Menard, you mentioned that you were from Southern California, but this is a pretty rural environment compared to Southern California. So I'm just curious, like, and I do not mean to be disrespectful, but why do you believe that you're qualified to assess the status of this, the construction of this facility here in Vacaville when you're from a fairly large city, from Metropolis? Just wondering.
I'm not sure what the question is.
I'm not sure if I understood the question.
I'm just asking if you recognize that this, the construction of this facility is in, because you mentioned projects in Southern California, but this is not Southern California, so that's just the question. Do you realize that this would vastly differ?
I think we've gotten some good questions about these facilities in rural areas. Are there any comparators? These facilities near residential, are there any comparators that are out there in the world that we can understand where they are and understand how they operate? And I think your question was kind of, is it apples to oranges to compare Los Angeles to Vacaville? So I think we will definitely take that as both a comment and question. Did you have anything else?
Yes, one last thing for the City of Vacaville. What is your assessment on the fact that on the impact to property tax values with the construction of this project and the possibly decreased property values? What is your position on that?
We don't have a position because the NRA is literally this exploratory process. This is a community meeting before the project's even been filed. My department's position was articulated in the letter we provided based on the preliminary review, which is basically that we and our partners in the other development review sections of the city have a ton of questions about this project. We do not have a position of support or opposition because we're staff. We're the ones who are looking at the technical side of this. So right now there isn't a position, there isn't a formal application. But that would happen if the project were to move forward. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. I want to grab 4 more hands on this side. I'm going to start at the front again and work our way. I know we're working toward the front. We're going in there's a method to my madness, I assure you. 2, 3, 4, 5.
So I might actually be letting our guests off the hook a little bit. So looking at some of the city documents that were signed, this says Menard Energy Storage, and yet the document signed, I believe the letter of exclusivity was signed by a company called DG Power. So is it Menard? Is it DG Power? We've already heard it was Vistra or Vistria. Now it's Ampere. Who are we dealing with here?
It's the agreement has been signed by Menard Energy Storage LLC. That's what the agreement is with.
So,
and I'm sure this is not too difficult to confirm, verify. We can take a look at the document and reconfirm that for you.
So I've looked at the documents that have been online, and they're signed by somebody from DG Power, which has a GoDaddy developed website. I can't find anything on a company called Menard Energy Storage. I do find that there's some sort of a multinational company called Ampere, and there's a division in the United States. The question now that I have for the city is, what due diligence have you done from a financial risk assessment with these entities? The other thing I'd also like to ask to the city too is, why is there an exclusivity agreement with them? What's the purpose of that? We've been told this land has no use, it has no value. Well, then why sign an exclusivity agreement? Why just tie yourself to a company? Why not put it out there for anybody that wants to develop it? It seems like you're kind of tying the city's hands, and that makes 0 sense to me, considering I do contracts in the private space. Lastly, I guess what I'm trying to also understand is, have you talked to the Department of Insurance of the state of California? Have you talked to the Realtors Associations? While this is going on, chances are folks are going to have to disclose this as a condition of the property. There may be something built here. Has anybody, researched what laws may have to be referenced? What's going to have to be said? If there's a possibility of diminution of value during this time? I appreciate the gentleman talking about the safety of everything, but what it comes down to is, the gentleman from Southern California said he lives near all these freeways. Did you buy that home when those freeways were there? Were all those freeways around your house when you moved there, sir?
It's not about me buying a house.
Yes, sir, it is absolutely about you, sir. Because I will say this, if those freeways were there when you bought your home, you made a choice to live there. The folks that bought their properties here 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago didn't have a choice, didn't have anything. When they moved here, they may have seen a water treatment plant, and they said, okay, I'll live there. But they didn't necessarily sign on to it. I had to sign a bunch of disclosures when I bought my home here. I had to sign a disclosure that there's an airport nearby, but I could see that and I could make a decision. I had to make a decision there could be dust from agricultural activity, but I could see the farms, I could see the horses, and so forth, but I still made that choice. A lot of folks in this district are not going to get to make that choice, and if they do, and they say, I'm out of here, and put their houses on the market, I want to know whether you, or the city, or the county is willing to look at diminution of value and compensate these folks if they can't get the true market value of their homes. Thank you.
So, those were a lot of questions. About the business entities, I can't give you an immediate answer. The difference between Menard, DC Power, I know that Vistara is no longer part of this. We got Ampere here, but we can put that up as an FAQ and clarify who is DG Power, who is Menard. I will need help from our city attorney's office, so I'm not going to take any risk of saying anything that's wrong, but I will do that. A second thing, why did the city council enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement with this particular party? This is the party that requested the agreement. They went through a public meeting. The council made the decision in a public space. So again, I can't recap that meeting with any kind of clarity here, but it is on video and you can find it on our website. And if anyone has any challenges finding the videos I'm referencing, let me know, Payman know. It's January 10th council meeting of this year. It is literally recorded, and we are happy to point you toward that because there was public discussion before the council made their decision.
I can actually...
oh, sorry, one more thing. The diminution of property value, that comes up a lot in any private development proposal. So it's sort of, no matter what happens, that's a question that always comes up. Typically, cities don't really get into that area. And I know that's not a happy answer, but that's just the truth. Where our council looks at what use do they want to have on the property, what do they want to approve on the property, that's not a direct part of the analysis that the city does.
So I guess the question on the table is, okay, so the city doesn't get involved in that. This is just a risk, I guess, of living in a town. Something could be built or developed. But insurance, we've heard this come up. You know, people's insurance rates are going up. Insurance companies are making decisions. I mean, a number of them, you can just read in the newspaper, they're pulling out of the state of California. They're not selling insurance. And there's probably others, if you've watched some of the news channels, you're probably hearing stories about people who are getting non-renewals after 10, 15, 20 years of having insurance because now they live near something that may have a risk. And they're not going to go out and interview with you all and say, is it safe? What they're going to do is they're going to make a business decision. And there may be these properties that are surrounding this project that now these folks are going to not have the insurance that they've come to rely on from a mainline carrier. And the problem with that is now they get into the substandard market. And that gets really dicey with possibly carriers that are not quite financially viable. And I still, you know, I would hope that the city is going to look at their financial viability because one of the things, you know, watching through, and I've seen a number of presentations, let me just say, everybody says they've got the best product on the market. I've never once sat through any sort of supplier discussion where somebody says, I'm really the worst, but I'm hoping to turn the tide with y'all. That's never the statement. They're always the leading, they're always the best, they're always the number one. They're never saying they're number 2 or number 10 or anything like that. So I know you're laughing because you've probably been in those same discussions with some of your suppliers and so forth like that. You know, you got the best contractors on the job. They're not the worst.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a very brief response to that? And then I'd like to move on and make sure I hear from, I have a few more hands in the air, so.
No, I was going to basically say a couple of things. Like one, I can factually clarify that the ENRA, and feel free to kind of look and check with the city as well. That contract is with Menard Energy Storage LLC. So that's kind of a confirmed thing, but do it independently. The other thing is regarding the values, now we're kind of getting into the edge of philosophy and economics. I can almost make an argument that with the investment coming into the city of Vacaville, with the jobs getting attracted, with new industries coming up, that actually should increase the value of the properties over here. But again, I'll leave it at that because now we are kind of edging philosophy and economics.
Let's not get too much into philosophy just because of the time constraints. So who else had their hands up that I called on? I don't want to miss. In this group, I got everyone over here. Was your hand up before, sir? Oh, my God, you're right behind me. Thank you.
You mentioned that because it's a city property, then you don't have to put it on the ballot. So just wanted to clarify the city's position in regard to disposing of or doing projects with city property.
Yes.
Do you think you can do anything with the city property without asking the people? What's your position on that?
The city properties, if they're declared surplus, that declares the city's intention to sell them. Because once it's declared surplus, which did happen some years ago, the city's made a determination, it's a council, that the property is not needed for a public purpose. So that takes us then to someone comes in with a private proposal. The city is under no obligation to sell the property, so that's the first decision point. If the city decides to sell the property, the city has full permit authority over what happens there through the city council, who are elected to represent the people. As I described when I was standing over there earlier, if people are truly dissatisfied with a city council's decisions, there are other legal methods to elevate that decision and take it to a broader vote of the people. That's the nutshell response to your question, but I hope I answered it.
A lot of people here would prefer this measure to be put on the ballot, and I heard that from many people here. So maybe not everyone said that, but a lot of people would prefer that. And the city council works for the people. That has been said here.
Yes.
So, and the city council is not the owner of the property. So although they're doing something with the property, they're doing it in the best interest of the people who live here, right? So in light of that, I really don't understand why you are resistant to putting this on the ballot. I think that.
So I just want to be clear. As a staff member, even though I am the community development director and I wield a tremendous amount of power, I am not the decision maker about how this project moves forward. I have heard a lot of you talk about how this should be settled by the people. That is feedback we've heard at this meeting. We have a large city team, some of whom are here, some of whom are watching the YouTube video, some of whom will hear about this after the meeting. This is all the kind of thing that we go back to our city departments and we talk about this and we figure out what our best advice is to our city council that we work for about how to proceed. I'm not dodging the question. I am not the decision maker, but I am the person responsible for getting these things out from all of you so that our council and everyone who works for the city of Vacaville has clear understanding of what the concerns are, what the requests are, et cetera. So again, I can't commit us to a vote of the people, but I hear you. You two were outside, and now you've moved on me. I want to go to the gentleman over here. Sorry, nice try, though. I like that about, sir.
I'll begin my comment regarding the battery storage project to quote directly from the City of Vacaville mission statement. Our mission is to understand and balance our citizens' needs, desires, and resources to achieve the highest possible quality of life for the overall community through the service we provide. Those 4 words, the quality of life, can sum up why I refer to the City of Vacaville as home. And I might add that the vast majority of families purchase homes in the North Village neighborhood for the quality of living, safety, well-being, the good life. This project will place an extremely hazardous material, lithium, into a residential neighborhood. The exact amount should be listed by Menard Energy. According to a scientific journal, lithium-ion battery fires generate intense heat and considerable amount of volatile gases and toxic smoke. I'll reference an Environmental Protection Agency report on a recent battery storage fire that occurred in Monterey County on September 20th, 2022 at the Moss Landing PG&E facility. The fire was reported in the early morning at 2 a.m. Due to the potential inhalation of toxic smoke, the fire department issued a shelter-in-place order for the properties in Moss Landing and the surrounding areas. How the order was carried out or what time the order was issued is not mentioned in the report. Residents were told to close your windows and turn off your ventilation equipment. At 7 a.m., the CHP closed a section of Highway 1. The battery burned for approximately 5 hours before mostly extinguishing itself. The burned battery continued to smolder, raising concerns that the lithium ion might release toxics into the air or might reignite. Monterey County Fire Department requested the EPA technical assistance and resources to conduct air monitoring. By 6 p.m., all air monitoring equipment was deployed and operational. At 6:50 p.m., the Monterey County Fire Department was able to lift the shelter-in-place order. Could such an emergency occur here? No community benefit attached to this project is worth the potential threat that would loom over the residents of North Village and the surrounding neighborhoods for the next 20 years.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
So thank you for your comments. The one clarification I'd like to add over here is that, as I said, or we've been trying to articulate is, perhaps we've not been clear enough, is that the industry has moved on. Moss Landing does show up and perhaps will continue to show up in news articles as an examples, but that technology, that deployment is nowhere comparable to what is getting implemented in today's world. So I'd like to just make sure that people understand that this is not another Moss Landing. That's one. Second is, perhaps you're also aware that Moss Landing did get expanded and phase 2 and phase 3 got implemented. I'm assuming that somebody kind of deemed it to be safe before that got approved.
Thank you, Samit. I'm going to wrap up the hands I have over here, and then you can put your hands down. I'm going to come to the front and grab the last set of hands. We have a time check. It's 8:37. We're still here. We're not going anywhere, but don't hurt your arm by keeping it up for all this time. I'm coming back that way. Okay, Will, if you want to keep your arm up, you can, just for exercise. Sir.
Good evening. So to kind of walk through this whole process, it sounds to me like the whole concept in putting this battery storage facility here is to take power from PG&E that PG&E is generating and put it into battery storage during off-peak hours. Is that correct?
So not necessarily PG&E. There are a number of independent power producers that are solar or wind
MCE
or whatever.
or-
Sure.
So-
And so it's basically when the sun's shining, the wind is blowing, there's an excess of energy in California.
Right. And the last I checked, there's no solar panels or windmills or wind farms anywhere near the Vacaville-Dixon substation. So to me, the purpose of having a battery storage facility is to store the energy created by solar panels or windmills. I mean, that would be the ideal place to have it, right? And as far as having access to putting that into the transmission system or into the substation to be diverted into the distribution system, why can't a facility like this be built somewhere, let's say Delavan Station? Because there's a generation plant up there, there's a natural gas compressor station up there, all that's PG&E owned. I know because I've worked on it before. And there's plenty of space out there. And so if the whole concept is to take this energy that's being generated and just store it for a little while for when we need it during peak hours, why wouldn't this project be better fit up by the generation plant and not here so close to town?
Excellent question, and I'm glad you asked this. The fact of the matter is that both of these deployments happen in real world. So there are projects where batteries and the generation source, which can be wind or which can be solar, they are co-located. And then there are also deployments that happen where standalone battery storage is put right next to the substation. The use cases for both are very different. When you're putting a battery close to a substation, the intention is grid stability and the balance between supply and demand to increase the stability of the grid. Versus the example you were citing, putting a battery next to a solar or wind, where the purpose is you shift the supply into the grid, the hours. For example, sun is in the morning, you want to inject it into the grid in the evening hours. So we call it as shaping. So two different concepts, both of them coexist for different reasons.
And has been working extremely hard this evening in the back there. Corey, thank you. Okay, so I want to hear from everyone, and if you've spoken before, you're going to have to unfortunately not speak again unless we really still have time left. So just first timers only, please. Bob, and then Bob's wife, I believe. Maybe? Yes, okay. And then you, ma'am. And then behind you, the gentleman in the black shirt, stripes, and plaid. And you have to remember that order because, again, it's getting late, and I'm starting to lose a little bit of my memory. There you go, Bob.
All right, thank you. So, first off, thank you guys for staying late. I appreciate that. I wish there were more people still here, but here we are. So, we heard earlier, there was a question back here earlier. There was another question, I think, from someone over here about between 2020 and 2023, you guys were asked to go look at other facilities, other locations, and so we still want to know what those other locations were and why they didn't work out. And I don't know why you're asking or answering the questions, you're just talking a lot, but I really want to hear from Menard because you were the one that was here. It was you. You're not, okay, Dale Fredericks, I know he's around here somewhere. Okay, Dale was right. Okay, Dale is somewhere. Okay, he's not going to be here. He's here, but he's not. All right. Next thing, you mentioned the fires in New York. What was the cause of that?
We don't know yet because I mean, there's an investigation. This was in June, so there's an investigation. Okay, there's some speculation that basically normally you isolate the top section, which carries the cables, with the battery section is isolated, and the isolation didn't work or
Failed,
something like
right?
that. It failed and rainwater got in.
Okay, correct. So my point
But again,
is,
that's not definitive. That's just something.
okay, so what about Moss Landing? What was the failure there?
So Moss Landing, three things. So Moss Landing is a warehouse facility.
I'm aware of it.
And as a warehouse facility, it's a place where people can walk in and out. And that there's a very important distinction there. And that is, when you have a facility like that, you have to have protection for the people that are in there, which means you're going to have sprinkler systems and, you know, some high-tech sort of what happens, so the what-ifs kind of thing. In the case of Moss Landing, what happened was the highly sophisticated water sprinkler system went off, and water got into a battery compartment and started the thermal runaway and, you know, the fire that ensued.
So my point is, no matter what kind of safety equipment you guys have, failures happen. And you guys are talking about, oh, we have all these safety equipment checks and balances and everything else. Things happen. Failures happen.
Sure.
You can't guarantee that that's not going to happen.
No, that's true. But so the incident rate, there's an incident rate of, you know, as I said earlier, Electric Power Research Institute has identified all the incidents that have occurred worldwide and in the U.S. And the incident rate is sub points. I think it's 0.6%. So it's less than a
What's
percent.
that based on?
That is based on the number of installations that are out there and the number of fire incidents that have occurred.
When you say installations, are you talking about sites or are you talking about specific battery cells, like each box?
So these, no, sites. So this is one site. So so Moss Landing is one site. So Warwick, which burned, is one site. Those are individual sites. Right now, or at the end of Q3, which is at the end of this month, there will be over 600 facilities in the U.S., BESS facilities. They're going up really fast.
And you said 63 have burned?
Worldwide. In the U.S., it's 19.
So out of that, I mean, I just want to make a distinction because numbers can be quoted, they can be misquoted, and they can be interpreted howsoever, right? So I want to draw a very clear distinction that more than half or roughly half of those happened with one technology in one country without specifically naming that. And that tells you that there must be a specific reason why that happened, and therefore an overgeneralization might not be the appropriate thing to do.
Would you say that the New York facilities were newer?
The New York facility?
The New York facilities that were just installed earlier this year that caught fire?
Yeah, no, that was new technology, yes.
So, if you were given the opportunity back in 2020, your facility would have been built with the latest and greatest technology. 3 years later, that technology is no longer the greatest. And now you are proposing the latest and greatest technology again. So this still includes lithium-ion batteries. So as you said earlier, SMUD is looking into testing iron flow batteries, and it looks promising, but they're in the early stages, right?
Correct.
And instead of megawatt hours, it's gigawatt hours. And because it's in the early stages, they're testing if it's going to be viable for a large-scale application. So why, as a resident, want your batteries here and your facility in this place for the next 20 years, when in 5 more years, your stuff could be obsolete, and there's a possibility of a much more safer option?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we don't know that that this is safer, that iron flow is safer. It is promising. There's also solid state batteries that are very promising. But we don't know. We don't know how long the development process will be. I did talk to the guy that's manufacturing the units for SMUD, and basically they're in the commissioning for the first stage.
Right.
I don't know whether that's 2 megawatts or 20 megawatts, but
I believe it's 4.
4 megawatts. So they're commissioning it. We don't know that it works yet. So,
Right.
you know.
But
So
again,
I could wait, and it could be 5 years from now, it could be viable and wonderful. 10 years from now, I just don't know.
But I think the important thing to understand over here is lithium ion gets widely cast as lithium ion, but not all lithium ion is the same. There are variants. And over again, we're trying to emphasize, and I'll continue to emphasize, that the industry has moved on from NMC and NCA, which were fundamentally the technologies which had most of the issues. So what we're talking over here right now is LFP, and LFP has not demonstrated the same failure rates, and therefore is right now the safest technology that you can find. And even beyond that, what we have done is gone beyond that and said, okay, fine, even if it fails, then what comes out of it and how far does it disperse?
And you're using us as guinea pigs for that.
No, actually not, because what we are seeing over here is that you're not even going to measure the CO2 and carbon monoxide even at the plant boundary. Forget about any area beyond that. You can only measure that 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet from the incident, not beyond. So in that sense, I think it would be unfair to say that we are treating people as guinea pigs. No, people are more important. People are the most important. That's what I tell everyone. Family first, people first.
Right, that's why we're all here.
Yeah.
I got one more thing. Lithium iron batteries, IRON, are strictly produced in China, is that correct?
No.
They haven't done it here yet?
Yes.
Correct?
Oregon and Massachusetts, they're manufacturing the actual
Lithium
battery.
iron?
Lithium iron phosphate batteries are being manufactured in both Oregon and Massachusetts.
Where?
I don't know, but I mean, I do know the companies, but Poen and Fluids are the two companies.
We're going to swap out the mic, so I'm going to take this one, which is almost dead, and we're going to replace it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for staying late. I really appreciate it. So I just have a couple comments and then some questions, and I'll try to be fast. But during the presentation and multiple times during the question and answer period, I've heard comments that the lithium iron phosphate batteries are safer. I just wanted to point out that according to the Electric Power Research Institute list of documented best failures, earlier this year there has been already 6 fires, and 4 of them have been lithium iron phosphate batteries.
3 of them.
4 of them. So
Chilmont and
I
2
can send
Warwick
you that link. I can send it to the city.
This is where I got my data, was from EPRI.
Okay,
So
yeah, I
I
just
looked at
checked
this-
it this morning, so I can send it to you,
Okay.
sure. Anyway, I don't want to argue about that, but my point is, yes, they are new, they are still having problems, and they're catching fire. So that's my comment.
Okay.
It doesn't make me feel any better living near a facility that has lithium iron or lithium ion batteries. I do have a question. Would this facility be subject to external audits or internal audits and for compliance? And is there any government entity or state entity that oversees these kind of facilities?
So certainly internal audits, the company, our mothership does. I'm not sure about what we're required to do externally.
You say external audits, are you talking in terms of what norms the facilities are subjected to during design, engineering, construction processes?
No,
or-
I'm more interested in compliance for safety, noise violations, things like that. Is there like a state entity that covers those kind of facilities for you, or?
So specifically, if you can be specific, that helps. For example, you talked about noise. Definitely the facility is going to be subjected to the noise regulations.
And that'd be Cal OSHA, I would think.
I really am hearing a very specific question, which is what oversight, if any, exists once the facility is operational? I'm not getting an answer right now, but I assure you we will look into that. And if there's no oversight by a specific agency, oversight by multiple agencies, we'll get to the bottom of that. That's a great question. Did you have any other questions or comments? Okay.
All right, let's see. My next question is, where is the remote monitoring located, and how fast can someone from your company respond to an emergency?
So we haven't established the remote, we haven't, because this is the first, this will be the first one in the US that we've built. So the remote.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we, we will establish one. It could well be here in Vacaville, I don't know, but,
Okay.
you know.
Okay, because in my research, it seems that if there is a problem, somebody from the energy company usually responds on site. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
so we have maintenance people that are available to respond, and they will be local.
Okay, so they'd be on call or something like that and respond.
So these are the guys that are working probably 40 hours a week maintaining the battery units that I went through, so.
Okay.
So I want to come back to your original question because I heard some laughs in the audience. By no means is the remote monitoring considered as a trivial matter. It's a very serious matter, including when you talk about remote monitoring, it is subjected to requirements from NERC. It is not my wish in terms of what I want to do. It's regulated by the regulatory agency at the federal level. In terms of the exact location of where this monitoring happens, these remote SCADA system, through remote SCADA systems, these facilities are monitored as portfolios. And there are professional companies that actually do the remote monitoring. And that monitoring happens here in the US, that monitoring happens in local areas. So if the question was, hey, we don't know whether this is getting monitored overseas, well, I can assure you that's not the case. The monitoring happens locally.
Okay. One more question. So battery storage systems in my research do create a lot of noise. I know in your presentation you said they are quiet, but they require all those HVAC systems, and some of these containerized units have double the HVAC to pump out the air and give it that ventilation. If you're going to put this many containers, it is going to be noisy. You're going to have to do noise mitigation. Do you have a plan to mitigate that with a sound wall? What is your plan? And also, is it going to be high enough for the two-story homes across the street?
So, yeah, that's actually a really good question. So if there's noise issues, we have to respond to the far field noise requirements, which is under 70 dB, which is pretty quiet. That's quieter than me talking right now, that's for sure. So 70, yes.
No, I'm sorry, sir. May I correct you to go to section 415 of the California Penal Code? The number is 50 at your property lines, sir.
Okay, so I would like to clarify that if they move forward, they will be required to submit a noise study prepared by an acoustical professional, reviewed by the City of Vacaville, peer reviewed if necessary, that will articulate exactly how much noise the project is generating and what it takes to mitigate that noise. So that is something we look at. I can't give you the answer about how it's all solved, but that would be part of the city's environmental review process, no matter what. Did you have another question? Okay, I'll give you back to mine.
Sorry, this is my last one. Okay. And what is the consequence for staying within those limits? Would it be fair to say that if it's just a fine, that you guys would pay the fine and continue running?
No.
What is the consequence for violating the noise limit? Because
So-
a noise that's like, maybe a helicopter above your head could be annoying for a few minutes, but if it's constant 24/7, that's going to impact quality of life.
If there's noise coming from either the transformers or the batteries, it's I don't want to say de minimis, but the cost of putting in a sound barrier is it's not that expensive compared to the rest of the project, so it wouldn't be that much of an issue. Just like there was a gentleman that talked about putting in HDPE liners. That's a great idea, and cost compared to the rest of the project is de minimis.
Okay,
So.
I guess I'm trying to find out what the consequence is if it goes above that limit, if it ever does, if it
I don't
causes
know.
people problems.
Those are the kind of things, and again, I'm using the term conditions of approval very much in the context that there is no project, nothing's being approved, we are where we are. But if the city approves any project, let's set aside battery storage, we don't have any of those, and they're required to stay under a certain noise level, if they violate
go.
their permit, in this case it would be a use permit,
50
then the
decibels.
city has various consequences. It could involve shutting down the facility. I say that, but I don't say it lightly, because I don't think the city has any of these. I know we don't have any of these. I don't know what it would take to take that kind of action, but it is the kind of thing that gets addressed if there is a use permit through conditions of approval, if there is an approval. So we would definitely, that's part of our whole environmental process. I want to make sure everyone has a chance. So you're next in a row. I can't forget you.
I have lots and lots of experience with SCADA, specifically interfacing with the City of Vacaville. And I can tell you that it's not all computerized. It's a lot of errors occur by human operation. And a lot of the failure occurs high heat and high winds in a cabinet with an air conditioner. Something in there fails. I also have experience with step up and step down transformers, and those also fail. So if that's your support system, you know, that's questionable. And a comment that I want to make is, I don't know how anybody else in the room feels, but your presentation, while it was professional, I just felt it was really casual. And we're not casual about this. I just felt like you were very casual and nonchalant. And I'm like almost a little offended that you thought we were all as gullible to believe everything that you say. And that's all.
Okay. I'm going to take that as a comment, and we're going to keep going because I know we've got people who are anxious to speak for the first time. Sir, you're up.
So, two very basic questions, and I think a lot of the dialogue that's gone on tonight has been asking a lot of questions about superficial and topics that are difficult to answer. My question is very basic. One, what are you estimating your annual operating costs are going to be for insurance? And two, what is the liability policy you're going to maintain in the event that your site explodes? Because the value of the property surrounding you is very, very expensive. So how much insurance are you maintaining, and how much are you estimating to hold at any given time?
Want to answer the O&M question?
Yeah, the O&M was,
You should know this. Yeah.
no,
We haven't gotten to the numbers yet without knowing the number. No, I just want to make sure that I give the right number, because one thing I do believe really in is to be truthful and give the right numbers. Otherwise, I could pull a number from the sky and speak anything if I wanted to, right? I'm not one of those individuals. The O&M on this plant, we will be spending at least $5 to $6 million every year just on the O&M inspection, which does not include the battery upgrade and the replacement of the batteries.
Did that answer your question?
$5 million in insurance.
No,
That's not insurance.
no, that's not insurance, that's operations and maintenance.
That's just the O&M.
I would like to know the
Insurance.
So the
as you've quoted, the regulations have changed, the underwriting has changed, the risks have changed, the mitigation has changed. So as these evolve and continue to evolve on this prototype design that you are proposing, as you said, there's not one in the US. So
No, we haven't built one.
you haven't.
Right.
So it's a
It's not-
prototype.
It's not a prototype.
It's a prototype to your organization. Someone else has built one, but you haven't. I just want to know how much insurance you're expecting to carry at a regular operating cost for a yearly basis, and what is the value of the full liability if this thing goes south when it does?
Excellent question. We'll provide the answer transparently. But part of it is the insurance coverages are also dictated by who underwrites the project and who basically finances the project. Typically, what you and I have seen in the industry is a full replacement value, just that for the property insurance, and then there is a liability coverage as well. Happy to come back with the answer to that, but I don't want to provide any misleading numbers. at
Your
this
question is very clear, sir. We can get you a clear answer. Okay, we hear you.
That's why I want to know, as with all these people, we are your liability.
We understand that perspective, sir. Really, and this is, we don't want to make up numbers, so we're going to put that on the list of things to get back to you on. Very good questions, very clear questions. Okay, there are some people in this room who still haven't spoke. Two of them are sitting literally right in front of me. Is there anyone else in this room? It is currently 9. I know some people are getting a little restless. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken? Okay, I got a hand in the back, 2 here, 1 there. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you can stick around and listen to others after you've spoken, that's wonderful, but we're just going to try to get through the last few. So, sir.
Okay. My hearing's not so good, so possibly these questions I know they got asked, but I did not understand your answer. People asked at least twice, who is Menard's parent company? And your answers seem very evasive. Who are we really dealing with? Menard is a shell. Who are you guys?
I think the answer was clear. Menard is owned by a company called Ampere Energy.
Okay, Ampere. Okay, so now we know where we can look up and see what Ampere's safety record is, because as you said, you haven't built anything in the U.S., so we feel kind of like you're guinea pigs. The other thing is that I'm not understanding what the real purpose of this facility is, because we don't have a whole lot of brownouts here in Vacaville. So I don't understand where there is any business sense for this facility to be built in PG&E, which seems to have plenty of power to supply Vacaville and the surrounding area. Why would they make a contract with you other than that there's some sort of state regulation somewhere that says they have to? And I know there's a whole lot of state and federal money being poured into so-called green energy, but it seems to me that once policy changes, this facility may become unprofitable, and the phantom Menard is going to walk away from it, and City of Vacaville is going to be left with an EPA cleanup site.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. Anything you want to respond to, or shall I keep?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of speculation in that question. I mean, I could respond, and I can take 1 week to respond to that question, because the answer could be that long, but it's a lot of speculation out there. But I would just make one statement, that the work that we are doing is for the goodwill of humankind. This is about cleaning up the environment. This is about global warming, and this is about deployment of clean energy in a sensible manner. That's what it is. Some people will believe, some people will not believe, and let's not get into that argument.
Okay.
Lithium mining is not clean. Spend 30 minutes on Wikipedia. Nothing is dirtier than the mining that's coming for lithium and all the other minerals that go into batteries and whatever else. When you talk about the oil industry is bad, mining, I'm sorry, is much worse, because once that mine operates, that land is gone forever.
I want to say thank you. We heard that also from the people. No, it's fine, from the folks in the back. So thank you for sharing that perspective, Mariam.
This might be for the city. Is the land north of Vaca-Dixon substation available? And who does it belong to? Because that would put it further from the homes. I just wonder if you could move it north, maybe even northeast of Vaca-Dixon substation, that would give the folks more of a buffer. What new development? Okay, it would be nice to know. And I think you just answered this, but humor me. When in the presentation about the safety, you were talking about computerized monitoring of the systems, and I just wanted to know, is there also human monitoring? I think you might have answered that when somebody else talked, but is it just computers are going to monitor when something goes wrong, or is there going to be human interloop there as well?
So the operations center,
Yeah.
where we buy and sell energy and all that sort of stuff, will have humans there. Yes.
But
At
so
the
they
site-
will know about if the computers at this site here
Yes.
say, hey, something's wrong with whatever.
Exactly. So it's very similar to if you go into any power plant, there's an operations center or a control center, and in that control center, I mean, they are remote. Yes, an operator can go out, and sometimes he needs to go, a quarter of a mile to wherever the issue is, or miles. In the case of my last project, they literally had to go more than a mile. But so that control center, yes, there's human operators that are looking at the board, but there are safeguards that kick in automatically, and for a good reason. If you have a voltage fluctuation, you don't want to wait till somebody goes, "What's that red light flashing?" Right?
Exactly.
You want it to shut off immediately, and that's the purpose of having distributed intelligence network, or whatever you want to call it, that we're going to use to control the site, just like you do in a standard power plant.
So what happens if the computers miss something? That's more what I'm worried about, not the hacking situation so much that somebody mentioned, but, programming fails, computers fail. I mean, what if it goes offline for an hour?
So, that would be if the communications with the operations center went offline, the plant would shut down.
It will automatically?
Yes.
Okay. And you talked about heat. I'm just curious. I know that you've developed it for, I guess, today's standards, but given climate change, given predicted increases in temperature, is it going to withstand heat, say, 8 to 10 years from now, that's going to be higher temperatures than what we have today?
I mean, I don't know the specifics of, how many degrees or whatever, but I'm sure there'll be, so whatever your, call it your 100-year high temperature, they'll take the 100-year high temperature and they'll design it to be able to cool to in excess of that number.
Who is they? When you
The
say
design,
All right, let's
the box
answer this way.
designers.
I think you're talking about the air conditioning units, right? Which are sitting on top of these battery enclosures.
I thought you talked about heat in relation to the batteries as well, but I will listen to what you want to tell me.
The batteries don't normally operate hot. You keep them cool with an air conditioning unit on top of the individual box container, right? But they don't normally operate hot. If they are hot, that's when you shut them down. You keep the air conditioner running, but you isolate the batteries to make sure that you're not charging or discharging. And then obviously we're going to call our maintenance folks out there to go find out what the problem is and fix it. So as far as setting it up for higher ambient temperatures, usually what you do is you identify what's the 100-year high temperature, and you set it for that. So if the 100-year high temperature in Vacaville is 118 degrees, then you probably set it for 120.
Or maybe higher. Well, climate change has changed that,
that's
a
a very
lot.
good
That's what
point.
I'm worried about. I've been here 50 years. It's definitely getting hotter. It's going to get hotter, So I want to know that's taken into consideration. And somebody asked you about smoke, and I kind of didn't think there was smoke, but apparently there is. Can you?
Sure. If it catches fire, if it catches fire, then the products of combustion create smoke. And typically, the black sooty part is the part that burns off first, okay? And that burns off within minutes, half an hour, that sort of thing. And then what you're left with, as the battery continues to combust, it's the lithium-ion battery portion that's continuing to burn, to expend itself, and what you're left with there is generally carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide.
Right. So, but the things that we would worry about are those ones that you talked about in the first few minutes.
Yeah.
No, the things that you worry about is carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, because high concentrations of those are the ones that cause, that's the reason you've got carbon monoxide sensors in your houses.
I mean, carbon monoxide is a poison. It is.
Right.
It's not good.
Right.
Right? So it is localized around the individual container, and then the air disperses it. I mean, carbon monoxide is created by any combustion. If you have a fireplace, if you have a propane fireplace or natural gas fireplace, you're going to produce carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. It's incomplete combustion is what happens. And that, it disperses into the air.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Marion. I know you waited a long time to ask questions, much have others. Back here, I have one hand, I think, and then we're going to go back over here. Yes, no worries, we're going to get there. There you are.
All right, thank you. So does the city have or plan on obtaining the expertise, because it seems like this technology is new to most of us here. Do they have the expertise or plan on getting it to inspect these batteries, make sure that what they say they're going to bring in is what they are actually bringing in, or is it all going to say, well, are we going to have to pay a bunch of money to the consultant? How does that work? That's my first question.
Oh. It's CEC, isn't it?
So if this project moves forward and the city is formally reviewing the proposal, we will hire using the applicant's money, using the applicant's money, our own technical experts to do the environmental analysis. So we actually would hire a company, an environmental company that's expert in this area, And they would also identify other technical studies that need to be commissioned under the city's exclusive review to basically look at all these issues in great detail. So that's how it works. The city doesn't pay for this. If it's a private proposal, the proponent provides the funds. The city hires the qualified consultants to assist us. So we don't do it with our own expertise. We actually require that the applicant fund us being able to find experts to assist us. Because we'd be learning about this, much like the chief described earlier, if this thing actually formally goes forward.
This is during the construction, not during the, no, I'm talking about once they say, we're going to put this in, that's
So that would be, the question is how would the city make sure that what's out there is actually what was approved and is actually what was expected? That would happen through an inspection process following the construction. I mean, again, if it gets approved, it would be through the inspection process. And we have, through our plan review process, again, if this happens, we have plans that show what's supposed to be out there. The permit's issued after thorough review by various technical folks. They go out and make sure that what is on the plans is actually out in the field. And then the other way, there was a question earlier about who has oversight over these facilities when they're in the operation. I think he mentioned one, but we're going to dig into that and figure out if this facility went live, what other agencies besides the City of Vacaville would have oversight, because I don't know the answer to that part of your question.
And then I know there was something said earlier about, they're looking into the possibility of this microgrid type thing, which sounds like a nice idea, but since this is going to be ending after 20 years, so what's going to happen to the void that gets left when the microgrid goes bye-bye because they've pulled out? That's another thing I'm kind of wondering how that works. I don't know if there's an answer to that or not. And then, so I know you guys are offering this benefit package thing, so I mean, it's, so are you just paying for the construction, or who's gonna, or is that gonna cover the ongoing maintenance, or is that now gonna be a cost that's gonna ultimately get borne by taxpayers? Are we gonna have to pay more taxes to pay for that? It seems like this could result in ultimately being like, instead of a benefit, this is another expense to the residents.
Do you want to answer the cost questions?
Sorry, I'm not sure I fully understood that question, which is about the benefits and whether that is a cost to the residents.
The applicants expressed their perspective that if this goes forward, the city's going to receive increased property tax based on the increased value of that site. I'm just going to say that because that's what they said. Also, that they're willing to offer a $20 million public benefit contribution to the City of Vacaville. Yeah, that's the $20 million at this point is proposed as a one-time lump sum. The property tax gain that they're articulating is proposed as, basically the value of the land goes up, the city gets more money. As far as the operational stuff, they would be expected to shoulder that. But these are the lump sum $20 million as part of their initial proposal, and then they've articulated there would be a property tax gain. I don't know if that totally answers your question, but.
Okay, so when you said the operational, it's going to be borne by
us.
Okay, of this benefit facility, this park or whatever it is. That's what I was asking about. Like, who's going to be paying for the ongoing costs related to that?
So
I understand the question now. So the question is, if the city receives a $20 million public benefit in the form of a facility, who is paying to maintain that facility? That's a subject of negotiation. I mean, it could be. The city could say a lump sum is not enough. There's this ongoing cost. That's something we would have to figure out as part of the review process if we have a formal proposal. Because to your point, a gift that ultimately burdens the city with maintenance and operation costs is not necessarily that gift that it sounds like at the beginning. I hear your point very well. Okay, anything else?
Okay, so yeah, so hopefully that's, I know there was talk with these other fires, they've had these other incidents, there's people been told, because of all these chemicals that get given off, you shelter in place and turn off your air conditioning. Now, some days it's pretty common here, especially in the summer, it's 110, 115 degrees. So especially if I'm an elderly or health vulnerable person, I'm supposed to stay inside with the AC off and I'm sweating to death in my house. That doesn't really make sense. Who's supposed, are the first responders going to be able to come get to me? If I'm not supposed to leave my house, how are they allowed to come in? Do they have to have a hazmat suit or something to get to me when I'm passed out from heat exhaustion? That's the thing I'm trying to understand. How is that going to work?
I'm going to take that as a question that we will respond to. I will tap into the expertise of our folks who are the first responders. Thank you for those questions. Do I have any other hands in this section, or am I going back over? I think we're in the final stretches.
I want to get to, I can come to you, ma'am, although we've spoken before. Let me get the folks who have not spoken yet. Who is the first person over here who hasn't spoken yet?
Hi. Thank you for being here. My name's Alicia. I'm really trying to understand. I'm trying to be open. And, you know, I'm getting emotional because, I mean, all of us obviously are very affected. And, you know, weighing the risks, I hear you saying it's good for the environment. I'm a teacher. I really don't understand how it's good for the environment, but let's say it is good for the environment for the reasons you've explained. Obviously, this is going to be a financial benefit, or I'm assuming that the city wouldn't agree to it. What profit monetary value is the city forecasting to make from all of us?
The question about what money the city would make is an unsettled, there's no answer to that. At the concept level, at first they were proposing a sports facility valued at about $20 million. Then it became $20 million value, whatever the city wants. That's something that would be the subject of negotiations if the council decides they want to sell this property to this developer, if the applicant pursues this project through that process. So there's no answer to that yet. But that the public benefit, what it is, how much it is, how it works, that would be figured out if the project advances. And it would be up to the city council to decide what is required for the project.
The other thing is, if I'm understanding correctly, you both are new to the project. What happened to the people that birthed the concept of this company? Why did they leave?
So it's quite often that there's an originator of a project, and that originator can only take it so far because there's costs associated with development, and then they go to basically somebody that can develop it completely to the end, and the project gets sold to.
If there will be 4 to 6 people on your maintenance technician team, are they going to be split shift, or are they all going to be day shift people? So will you have 24-hour employees working on the site? Is there going to be light there 24 hours a day?
Yeah, we don't know the answer to that quite yet, but I wasn't envisioning light towers in the facility or anything like that, so it would probably be daylight work. You know, it's maintenance work. So usually, in a power plant, all the maintenance guys are daytime guys, other than emergencies.
My husband works for the pipeline, and they're mainly daytime people, but they have people who are on call. You didn't seem to have an answer earlier when someone said, will there be someone who can come to the site if there's a problem? You seem to kind of brush that off, but I would think you would have someone coming in for overtime if there was a problem.
The person that would initially respond to the would be our maintenance folks, because they're going to be the closest. And in spite of the fact that they're daytime folks, of course we'd be able to call on them and say, we got a problem, get to the site.
Will your SCADA system be managed by a company who does SCADA for just power plants and battery storage facilities?
Probably just for battery systems, yes.
Okay. And could the $20 million that they're offering, could that be used to built a school? Like, we're so short on schools, can the city give the money to the school district and say, please build a frickin' school out here because we're overpopulated in our classrooms? Our teachers are suffering, we need another school. Could the money, instead of a sports facility, since North Village 2 already has a sports facility on the plate, if I recall correctly, at the last meeting I was at. So could the money be used to just build another school?
I'm going to answer that question. If this proposal moves forward and a developer is proposing a public benefit, the amount of the benefit and what it would be used for would be the subject of a lot more public input. I'm hearing a suggestion this evening, but that would be absolutely part of the process of reviewing a formal proposal. Would be what is the benefit? How much is it? Is it 20 million? Is it 40 million? I mean, that number's not, it's fixed from their perspective. The city has not settled anything. So I just want to but then again, tonight I've heard a lot about how it doesn't really matter how much money. So, but we'll take this into account. The school is your idea.
I'm a realtor, so I'm wondering if the natural hazard zone disclosure reports that everybody signs nowadays when you buy a house, if that will have to disclose, hey, we're within this far of a battery storage facility, or does that just fall under the industrial nuisance portion of it?
That's a pretty technical question. We can get an answer to it. Don't have it right now, though. Thank you. Okay, we had a person back here, the last person whose hand has been raised this evening.
She was the first person, I think.
Okay, so I did have one question, and I probably don't actually want to be answering questions for you that you probably should have answered yourselves. But I've heard a lot of times from people in the room that have asked, why would PG&E pay you? Why would we do this? Why, when we don't have rolling brownouts, we don't have blackouts? And I can only assume that the answer to that question is that you guys are looking into the next 20 years and you're figuring that there's going to be additional growth. There are going to be additional homes. There's going to be, you know, higher level of requirement by the state to turn to EV, and that there's going to be a greater need for energy. So again, I'm not here to like speak for you guys, but I'm thinking that's got to be part of the answer. And if it's not, at least it sounds good, so you should try it out.
Is that your comment? Okay, thank you. Just going back to the front of the room, I want to let everyone know that if you made comments tonight and you want to make more comments, the city takes very seriously, as you can tell by the time we spent with you this evening. We want to hear your comments. You can send them to us on the website, comments, questions. We will respond. I know some of us will be here afterward. If any of you have any more direct things you want to say, this is just the first step of a potential much longer process, and the information you all provided staff and the applicant team tonight is really valuable. And again, I know there's been some skepticism over the course of the evening and a little bit of hostility and some laughing and some clapping, but the fact is the whole point of this meeting was to get these things out on the table so that as staff, we know about them, our applicant team knows about them, and we certainly have a lot of work to do. And again, if this project moves forward, the NRA is in place, right? That's happening. But if the potential, they come in with an application to actually build this thing, you will all be notified if you live within a great distance. If you got a mail notice this time, if you're on our email list, you'll be notified by email. It'll be on the website. We would send out a notice of application, another community meeting, so just keep an eye out for that. If you have any questions after this meeting, you can contact me. I'm Erin Morris, Community Development Director. I'm going to sign up Payman Bhavan, Planning Manager. The lucky man has not had to say anything tonight, but he and I are the project leadership on the development permitting side, and we're happy to hear from any of you. And if you want links to things, we're also happy to connect you with any online resources. So thank you so much for coming this evening. Really appreciate everyone being here.
I think I would like to say thank you as well to you all, because we genuinely believe this has to be a two-way process. We do want to hear from you. We do want to incorporate the feedback. And this is us working together to make something happen, a change happen for all of us. Thank you again.
Thank you.